note, for maximum picture quality, it may be necessary to adjust the tracking control on your VCR.
They say politics is the most honourable pursuit, working hard in public office to help shape society in your vision, to make the world a better place for everyone, and to help guide a country, a city, a town, or a school forward to a prosperous future. But I'm not sure I agree. I've seen the people who do those jobs. The most honourable pursuit is to host a podcast. This is Adjust Your Tracking, a podcast where we're on a venture to watch a century of cinema, decade by decade, year by year, and I'm one half of your hosts, Liam Delaney, and my good friend sitting next to me on the virtual screen is...
Oliver Jones.
And welcome to the show. And today we've got our first guest to the show, actually. This is a man who, on first meeting, Oliver didn't like, but they soon became good buddies.
We're not going there. No, that's not true.
It's a true story.
It's not true.
It is a true story. And I'm glad finally, through this podcast, the truth will come to light.
Now I've got Ollie staring daggers at me.
Hello, my name's Paul Nadin. I didn't realise I was the first guest. That's very exciting. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking about music and not music, movies. What are we talking about?
We can talk about music, baby.
We talk about video games a lot,
movies,
so...
books, video games, life.
Do you remember that show when
shit.
you were a kid? Movies, games, and videos. This is that show.
You know what my biggest memory of that show is?
What's that?
The fact that you used to audio record it on a cassette and then listen to it.
I didn't have a VCR player. I had to watch the latest Jim Carrey interview talking about Ace Ventura 2 and how he stuck I don't know what he stuck on his fingers, the papayas, I don't know. Anyway.
Oh,
continue.
The
what a movie!
Gourds.
So many memorable moments.
Oh, all the memorable moments. That film is a trash heap.
Yeah, but it's a trash heap that's got Jim Carrey coming out of a rhino's arsehole, and I'll watch that.
And there's many more films for you, Ollie.
It's just another classic representation of hubris, isn't it? Like they were like if you listen to anyone talk about the making of the first movie, like they all thought it was going to be a disaster and all their careers would be over, and then they got away with it, and they thought, let's do another one, let's go.
Bigger,
I'm ready.
How do we go to a place where there's loads of pets?
Yeah. Where do animals live?
Where do animals live?
I know.
So yeah, do we introduce how we know Paul or not, or do we just kind of leave that?
Paul's a good guy. That's how I know him.
Paul's been a good friend of ours for around 20 years, and he acted in many of our films growing up. And he was kind of like, I'd like to say he was my avatar on screen. He was the better looking version of me, the more suave. I'd put him in all the action roles, killing zombies or wearing lycra or rubber suits.
That sounds pretty accurate, but I think you'll find it's pronounced Muse, not Avatar.
That is correct. You are the Muse.
I do. I feel like a lot of my youth was defined by Jones just dressing me up.
Yep.
I spent a lot of time just running about. It was great fun. I absolutely loved it.
So how have we all been this week?
Good. Look what I've got. I've got a thing.
You have to. Is it show and tell?
Yeah, look.
Offers Dyke Journal, written by
names on it.
Oh shit!
It's a book, by the way, audience. Can you buy this book?
For all the viewers, it's a book that you can buy.
The viewers.
Online from real places. You can only buy it online. You can buy it at Archaeo Press. It is the first edition of the journal, which no one cares about because this isn't an archaeology podcast.
I care because Offers Dyke, I learnt, is super relevant at the moment because of the border between England and Wales, which has been in the news because of idiots.
Yes.
and politics, which I'm sure will come up during this thing. So yeah, that's a thing. It's relevant. It's political. It's about culture.
It is.
It's technically media. These are all things that listeners of this podcast...
It's the way politicians take aspects of our world and turn them and twist them and abuse them and use them for their own means. And that's been happening this week with Offers Dyke because Paul's watched my Twitter feed, apparently.
You're the only person I follow on Twitter, Liv.
Hey.
That's it.
So
what?
Yeah.
You never tweet anything.
I don't. It's true. I just retweet what Liam tweets.
Oh yeah, on the master feed.
So have you been, Paul? You been good?
You know what? It's a really weird time. It's it's crazy days. But, you know, my little baby girl is 9 months old today. She's doing great. You know, everyone in my family is healthy, touch wood, you know, works good. I've got very, very little to complain about. I have, you know, I'm not being forced onto public transport to go and, you know, be around a load of other people. So lots of things to be thankful for.
I had to go to the office yesterday for the first time in, what has it been, 8 weeks, I think? It was really weird. I was just like, there was 3 people in the whole office, and there was just me in my office alone, dealing with stuff remotely. It was a really bizarre experience to be back there. And my plants had suffered. I forgot about my plants, and they're just like drenched into little twigs, like begging for water. So I felt really bad about that. That's my week.
Always the first victims of any crisis.
They are. They didn't like me socially distancing from them. Or at least socially distancing them from water was the bad thing.
Yeah. I guess it's weird because I work from home anyway, so it's really strange, and like going into an office would be weird for me. You know what I mean? So is this kind of crazy situation, almost like being sort of holed away in a bunker already somewhere and just wondering what's going on in the outside world, like, you know, what other people are up to. And it always kind of, you know, it almost feels rude to ask sometimes, because obviously my situation, I have to kind of shrug and be like, yeah, it's pretty much the same. Like, you know, talking, and as well as, like, you know, with me being a self-employed person and like this whole situation like not really affecting my business, and then you know, I talk to friends and family who are like in a different situation to that, and I just have to kind of sit there going, oh man, that sucks, and just, you know, trying to empathize and sort of not talk about it too much. But, you know, what are you going to do?
To our viewers, Paul has a video game PR company, correct? So was it Future Friend Games?
Yeah, we're Future Friends Games. We do a lot of PR agency stuff, a lot of marketing things. We've also got a couple of like games that we're publishing properly now, like as a publisher, which is fun.
Oh, cool.
And a big step for us.
That is really cool.
You sent me a trailer to the one game that you're working on. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it's like it's got a super distinctive look. You know, it's all about. it's called Exo One. It's very sci-fi, but it's all about kind of traversing through the environment in a very physics-based way, and like all of the environments are just really beautiful in the way that the movement is designed. You're essentially playing a spacecraft that like goes between like being a sphere to being a kind of disc, like it's a little bit Flight of the Navigator. And you can use the terrain to like kind of launch yourself, propel yourself. You can use gravity to like force yourself down to gain momentum, and then fly through the air. Is it how you manipulate the size of the disc and the size of the aircraft? Is how you kind of navigate the landscape and get past things and stuff? Basically, yeah, but it's very kind of freeform. So you have like a distant sort of goal, and then it's up to you to find your way through the landscape. And there's like certain elements that can like help you do that. And there's like a kind of mysterious, very sci-fi story. But a lot of it is just because like the flow state that you get into with the movement of the craft, combined with just the beautiful visuals, beautiful landscapes, skyboxes. You know, all kinds of things from like up in the clouds to like in the sea, you know, different kinds of planets and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, it's just really nice. This really kind of like Zen experience, I guess. Yeah, but also, if you really want to push it, then you can like really. Anyway, I'm not gonna start like selling the game or whatever. But
is it kind of like games like Gris and stuff like that? Like more kind of like in a way that it looks more artistic in the platform. Kind of
the way it looks, I'd say it's got because it's mostly like natural environments. I'd say it's got like it's definitely like a level of realism. Okay, but cool. Then it's got the very kind of hard sci-fi element of the craft itself, and also like other structures within it. But everything's very like very styled in a realistic way. There's a better way of saying that, but
it sounds good.
What's it called?
It's not like it's my job to talk about video games or anything. It's called Exo One.
XO1. And is it one guy developing it?
It is one guy.
This is one thing I wanted to ask you. I watched the latest, the new Xbox. They had like a trailer for all their new games coming out on the new Xbox.
Yeah.
And there's a game, is it called Blink? Or something like that, like a first-person shooter?
Is it called Blink? I'm not
Blink?
sure. There's nothing...
There's an old
Is it
game
first-
called Blink.
It's called Blink or Brink? I don't know, is it Brink? I don't
There
know.
is a
Brink
Brink,
came out
which
ages
is
ago.
definitely some kind of
But this one,
shooter.
it's like developed by one guy, and I thought that's pretty impressive if they're doing an Xbox One game.
Oh, God, yeah. They're really just crazy, like, just mad. Like, yeah, it's all like Unreal Engine, like...
He stole like
Yeah.
elements off of the games, or like or models or something like that.
Stole?
So he got in trouble. Yeah.
I don't know. I think you. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's like I don't think he necessarily like stole anything, but it basically like it uses an engine called the Unreal Engine, which like tons of games use. Like basically any game with lens flare is probably made in the Unreal Engine, as
I
well
heard you
as
can use
like
that for free now until you make over 1 million. Until you have 1 million sales or something.
Yeah, Unreal Engine 4, which is becoming increasingly popular for indie devs. So it's absolutely great because it's basically like it used to be about 5% and now it's 0. So it's just suddenly like,
Just exploded.
retroactive to like January or something. There's suddenly all these developers, including our two, publishing clients who now suddenly that's 5% of revenue that they're not going to be giving over to anyone. The reason for that though is like that's talking about Unreal Engine 4 and they announced Unreal
That's
Engine 5.
Yeah. Which
So obviously at the same time a lot of indie developers aren't going to have the time or resources to be able to switch over to UE5 when it comes out. But interestingly, of course, the most popular game made with Unreal Engine, Fortnite, is going to be migrating to Unreal Engine 5, which has potentially big ramifications because it could be a total disaster for them. Like it could be, by migrating stuff to UE5, that's kind of, because the game's starting to mature now. Like it's got to a certain point in its life cycle where, it could be that something else comes along that kind of sparks people's interest. And a lot of time, even if it's like, on paper, it's an improvement, these things, like just the change will force people away in enough numbers that, it can kind of help elevate something else.
It's also
Anyway,
got
I'm
messages,
talking
it's got
about
messages
this
coming in from the Emperor as well, which is really scary.
So what was this about the other game then? So the one I was on about, and like I was saying, there was stealing. Like,
oh yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but like I imagine what's happened is basically because it's one person and it looks just the look of it is crazy. Like a lot of the gameplay is kind of baked into Unreal Engine. Like it's actually. It's a huge achievement. Like anyone who can make a video game, like, is amazing. Like anytime any video game is released ever, that's just impossible. It's a miracle, honestly.
Yeah. I always say
and
the same thing about films. Making a film is impossible, and if anyone manages to complete one, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm saying this as someone who's worked on like literally hundreds of games now, and I tell you, like, anytime anyone actually comes out is like amazing. Like, it's just an amazing achievement to be able to do. But at the same time, there's a lot of tools, especially now and especially in the last 5 years, that have really helped developers create things that are like way more impressive than people feel like they should be. And Unreal Engine is a huge part of that because, I joke about the lens flare and stuff, but in Unreal Engine it's way more easy to make something look very impressive graphically than it ever has been before in history. And that's a big part of this FPS game. And I imagine what's happened is he's got a lot of assets from the Unreal store that basically some people it's like a big part of their job. Like a guy that we've worked with before, like a big part of his job is he'll just make assets for the
upload them
Unreal
up there
store.
so people can buy them off it, basically.
Exactly, yeah, and it's great because the way the lighting works, the way the material function
so
works.
it's like how you create stock footage or stock music, kind of.
Exactly, yeah, and
we used to do it for
So
RPG Maker back in the day, make sprites and just upload
what
them
license
so
you
people
pay
can
for
use them.
to use these elements and stuff like that. So
exactly, yeah, it's exactly the same. I think stock footage is a great kind of analogy to it, where it's just it's artists that are able to do it, but maybe they don't have like a specific project that they're working on, so they can go make something really beautiful that is like often it's stuff that's quite generic that provides a starting point for people, so you can buy a lot of these generic assets, so much of game development is iteration. You can get these assets and kind of put them in and go, okay, how does this level look? Does it all work? Are the sight lines all right? Does it flow the way we want it to? Okay, now we're going to go in and we're going to paint over all of this generic stuff and tie everything together and have a really lovely, consistent art style in like way less time than we would have been able to otherwise. And that's great. It's great for everyone, It's great for devs. It's if it improves the experience for players, that's great.
So, like, if they say a game is developed by one guy, does that mean that he does the music, he does the sound? Is it like, I don't understand where it starts and ends, or is it like a?
I mean, usually no.
Yeah.
Like, it's very rare for like any game of like a particular size or quality to genuinely have been made by one person. And I talk about that because in my company there's like a varying amount of people, but it means we work with a lot of solo devs and we do work for them that is required work in order for the game to be released. So immediately it's like, you're talking about a bunch more people. Sound is a great example. A lot of people who are programmers aren't also professional musicians. Like, there's not a huge amount of. Some of them are great, but there's not a huge amount of crossover. Even super famous ones, like I think Stardew Valley is a great example. Like the guy, I forget his name, I don't know why, but the guy, absolutely amazing, wonderful. All the stuff I was talking about, engines before, forget all of that. Like, he made that whole thing from the ground up. Absolutely incredible achievement. 9 years, totally mad to do it. Do not do that. Even that story, obviously a lot of that was pushed on the fact that like it was just this incredible achievement from one person, but it's not strictly true. Even though he did a lot more than like the average developer would, like he still had people helping him with all kinds of things, from like, especially from the publishing angle, which is overlooked often, I think, because it's not rocket science. Like, it's not like nothing that I do in my job is like particularly hard, and it's all things that like for example, you can take an average person off the street and you can say to them, write a short story, like a one-page story, and you'll get something. It might be terrible, it might be badly spelt, it might barely be a story,
but you'll get descriptions and you'll get dialogue that will join together to do something.
Yeah, and even if it's 100% plagiarized or whatever, you will get something. But then, by the same token, if you take someone out the street, put them down in front of a computer, and say, "Make a video game," what are they going to do? Like most people, like some people, like maybe would get as far as like downloading something like Unity or Game Maker or whatever, but like you're not going to get anything out of them. And I think because of that, people think that those things, and it's the same with like acting as well. You could put anyone in front of a camera and tell them what to say, and they'll be an actor, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do a great performance that really like enraptures audiences for generations.
I think it's the same when you get films that are said to be made by a single person. I think Monsters is a really good example, when it was all meant to be. He did this all himself in his bedroom and stuff like that. Gareth Edwards, I think. But like, actually, when you look at the whole film, there's a load of elements that go into that. There's nothing to do with him. He didn't do everything. He just did the kind of creative kind of direction of it. Like, and stuff like marketing, posters, advertisements, even presentation, people helping him on editing, people suggesting stuff, music, and then the actors themselves all contribute to a film. It's not just a single person just doing absolutely everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
It becomes a question of you seeing it right now, you sitting in front of that screen and watching that film is not just the product of that single person's endeavour. Like, the whole way it getting to a cinema, or the way or even a game getting to Steam, is all part of this machine that had to kind of mobilise and had to do stuff so you can get it as a consumer. Like, is part of that machine, and it is important. And if that didn't exist, you wouldn't find that film, you wouldn't find that game, you wouldn't actually see it. So there is elements to that aren't as, I don't know how you word it, aren't as kind of fun, I guess, in that creative process, but they are kind of really important to it.
Like, does a film or a game really exist if no one plays it or watches it? I mean,
if a tree falls in a wood.
It's like, can you hear a tree fall? Exactly.
I mean, if you ask an indie game developer, they play their own games like thousands and thousands of times during development, so they will tell you it exists. But yeah, kind of my point about like, the different skills and stuff is a lot of the time those. Do you call them soft skills? Maybe.
Yeah, I was trying to remember.
Those less technical skills are still skills, and even if it's the easiest thing in the world, it's still work. You know, it's still work that has to be done. It's still time that has to be done. And even, you know, Stardew Valley guy, 9 years. Okay, it worked out for him, but that's totally crazy. It's not a sustainable model for anything. And you know, if you're an indie developer, exactly, if you're an indie developer who's going over like, you know, 3 years development time, then suddenly it becomes this thing of, and I'm sure, you know, I don't know as much about movies as well, but it's the same with like indie projects. It's like pre-production is going to have to be shorter because everyone needs to get paid. Everyone's got stuff to do. Production has to be shorter because you can't afford to like rent a million places out. You kind of, you know, and then like other stuff, like, you know, I've read that in big productions and stuff, it's like they'll hire drivers full time to then like drive to a place to pick up like an actor and like bring them back, so they don't have to pay the expensive person as much, but they pay the cheaper person for like the whole time and things like that. Like obviously an indie production, that's mad. Like why would you do that? And I guess it's, you know, it's the same with game development as well. It's like you really need to kind of balance that like sense of ownership and wanting to do everything, just with the practicalities of understanding that like there is a lot of work to be done and stuff takes a lot of time. And like I said, you know, I've worked on hundreds of shipped games, and I work every day with people who have never shipped a single game in their life, and it's mad. Like the things that some people. The things that I've done 100 times that someone else like literally doesn't know it exists.
Yeah,
they don't know it. They don't know it's something that needs to be done. Then you tell them it needs to be done, and then they go, "Oh crap, I don't know how to do that." And you go, "Don't worry, I do." And it takes 5 minutes instead of 5 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and again, it's not rocket science, but it's experience, and it's anyway. I feel like I'm sitting here justifying my job, but like,
but it is skills. I think it's a really good point. I was talking about the other day about like the way we classify unskilled jobs in the country is lunatic. Like even stuff like nurses or care home workers are called unskilled, and I'm like, I couldn't do that job without incredible training and time and stuff like that. That's a skilled piece of work, and we have such a weird disconnect in why we treat a skilled person or what skills mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could definitely have a long conversation about, you know, like the labor theory of value and how, you know, how that concept was invented by capitalists. You know, they in the original capitalist model, like they acknowledged that the labor theory of value was like super important and it was part of the economy. And then someone called Carl something or other said like, oh, you know, this is actually, I think this is more important than you're giving it credit for. And then the capitalists went, oh no, that doesn't exist.
No, ignore that. It's fine. No,
so now
pay attention to that.
So now we have this capitalist, you know, we have this kind of capitalist idea that like, you know, stuff happens. Someone has money, and then that person spends money, and then something happens, and then more money happens, and no one understands what happens in between. No one acknowledges like how you go from like less value to more value because there's nothing, you know, who can explain that? You know, it's like magnets. You just can't.
Just can't explain that.
So what are the biggest games now?
Oh, God.
Do they cost more than, like, say, films to make now? So say, for like example, Last of Us 2 or Red Dead Redemption 2. What are you talking about budget-wise for a game like that? I mean, they've got to be big. Like, the length of them, the amount of assets they've got to be created. They're like... It's like a constant special effect, isn't it? The whole, like, it's just... It's got to be got to be more than a film now.
It's a lot. I mean, but again, and like I think it's similar to films. You know, like making the thing is only half of it. You know,
marketing
it's like,
is just the other half. Like, you know,
exactly.
That's why films can't make their money back now, because the marketing is probably like the same amount, if not more, than the actual budget of the film itself.
Yeah, it's the same with games, and you know the really big studios back themselves into a corner with this kind of stuff. And I think what's interesting, if you want to compare movies to the games industries, the games industries had an out where the games industries could move to a model where they said a game isn't a product, it's a service. Sure. And you can't do it. You can't say a movie is a service. Like, how are you going to do a movie as a service?
Well, they kind of do. That's the
you're gonna make
this week in about Amazon, in the fact that your digital purchases don't actually count for anything. you're just hiring that service, even though you paid for that film. You don't actually own it. It's just like you're just kind of paying for the time to be able to watch it rather than actually buying the film. So I think they're trying to play that game.
but what I really mean by that is like you're absolutely right, and I totally agree. And again, it is the same in games as well with platforms like Steam especially. But the key thing is like a video game they can release. You can pay your money for the video game, and then they can give you a little bit more video game that you also pay for, and then a little bit more that you also pay for, and then a new hat that everyone buys. You know,
so
and
there's
then
no DLC for movies, no additional content, unless you buy the Blu-ray or whatever, and you've got the bonus features.
Exactly.
But they're not going to keep creating new content, unless you're George Lucas.
Or unless you're Cats and you release a patch on cinema.
Day one patch for a movie, amazing. But yeah, that's the thing. And now we're in this bizarre world where the most profitable games don't cost any money. Like the business model now, going back to Fortnite again, is a great example. Fortnite, free to play, you download it, you play it, you have a great time, but your character model, it's a bit boring.
It's a bit crap. You know? Yeah, you want like a new
hat. Crap.
You want a nice dress. Come on.
Yeah. It's not. And now it's going crazy. Like now in Fortnite, it's like they have legitimate like Star Wars events.
Yeah.
Like actual licensed Star Wars events. You go in Batman. They have Batman events, so you can go. You play Fortnite, and you're like, I want to wear a Batman costume when I hang out with my friends in this game and shoot people. I want my sword to look like a lightsaber when I have a sword, and you can pay money for all of that. And there's 100 million people playing that game, and I tell you what, there's not 100 million people paying money into it, but you know. It's the same. It's the model that worked with Facebook games, mobile games, all these things. It's like you get a huge user base, and then you try and monetize and essentially exploit certain people who have like more money than sense.
And they've never really been able to do that.
Poor impulse control.
They've never really been able to kind of harness that kind of ability for them. They've tried so much, like multi kind of media games and stuff like that. Play the game, read the comic book, buy this, and we'll release it in 3D, and you can watch it this way as well. But I don't think it makes them a lot of money short term, but it's never been proven to be a really good business model for them at all. And now
I mean, there's other parallels and stuff like special edition, collector's edition,
steelbook,
steelbook. Yeah, all of these things are like total crossovers. But I guess that's the one real difference when I talk about games as a service. I mean that it's not a product to be consumed. It's a hobby. To keep going back to all these games. They want you to log in every day. They want it to become habitual. They want it to become an important enough part of your life that spending money on it feels totally justified.
I guess that's what really we're trying to get to with Disney and Marvel films and Star Wars, is that there aren't just stuff that are released rarely that you go and see. There's something that continuously exists in your life. That the new every 3 months, every 6 months, there should be a new product of this thing that you love, a new Marvel film, a new whatever, and it just always drags in the same people because it's part of your life now and it's part of your identity.
It's just feeding at the end of the day, though, isn't it? It's just
content.
But it goes away from the element of art versus just content.
Yeah.
Do you consider video games art, or is it a case of some are art, some aren't, and you could probably say that some films are, some films aren't? I
mean, I think a lot of it comes down to intention. Yeah. I feel like almost every video game has something you can point at and say there is subtext there is text, there is content. You can analyze, you can criticize almost every game like it's art. There's some people out there who think games shouldn't be political, but they're all idiots, because obviously everything is everything is political. But then I think
I got into an online argument about Star Wars being political this week, about them.
Liam, stop! Don't get into online arguments. Just talk to me, and we can agree on everything.
We can just agree and yell at each other in agreement.
Yeah. just get all hyped up. But I think you talk about a game like Fortnite. There's an element, obviously, of cynicism to it. I'm not going to get too into it, but there was an element of dodginess to how it came into being in the first place. But ultimately, they made decisions within that game, and decisions that shouldn't be controversial, that are like, you can, like, there are different shaped bodies for female characters in Fortnite, and to some people that's like absolute madness, like, they, you know, everybody loses their minds. But like,
What's
no,
that?
people,
There was a
and
game
that is
that,
like, that is an artist, that is ultimately, as well as political, it is an artistic decision, because you decide what your characters look like, you decide what world your characters inhabit. And it's a very interesting, again, it's interesting for Fortnite because it goes back to when Counter-Strike started doing skins for like guns and helmets and stuff. The ones that were the top sellers were all the ones that basically looked like paintball gear. They were all like brightly colored and silly, and you know, all of that stuff, and like no one cared about like the super like hyper realistic military blah kind of thing. And the same, you know, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds versus Fortnite, it was an unfair fight that Fortnite ended up on top of. But again, you look at those two games, you got that realism versus so of course art comes into it, because again, it's like, it's what attracts people to a thing, it's what makes people want to stay with a thing. And at the same time, I'm currently working on projects that are incredibly personal to creators, that talk about incredibly heavy subject matter, that are definitely designed to either provoke an emotional response, or to, you know, have a particular message that the player can interpret however they want. I mean, if anything is art, then video games are, you know.
No, I agree. Like, some of the games that spring to mind are like, is it BioShock Infinite, with the ending of that game, and
sure, yeah,
Journey and stuff like that. So
people got so mad at BioShock Infinite.
Wow.
You might not know about this. Are you familiar with the term ludonarrative dissonance?
no.
Everyone. I tell you what, there were a lot of people in games who weren't, but now everyone is. And again, it goes back to art, because a big part of the plot of BioShock Infinite is like, you are a person, you meet another person, you have this like weird kind of relationship that you're thrown together, and you're in like a dangerous situation, and then you as a player shoot someone in the face, right? That's just a thing that happens, and the other character goes, oh my god, you just shot someone in the face. And it's meant to be like, you know, in video game land, like in big video game land, that's like this huge revelation of like, oh my god, like I did the video game thing, and the video game called me out for being a bad person, even though it totally forced me to do it. And you know,
it's morals in video games, like.
Yeah, but then the concept of ludonarrative dissonance is basically like, within the story, the character goes, oh my god, you killed someone, you're horrible, and kind of runs off. And then about 5 minutes later, that character is then like throwing you extra ammo and health packs as you mow down like hundreds of people. And it's kind of like, okay, so what you're doing in the game does not tie together with the message that the game is telling you, and that's where the dissonance comes in. And ludonarrative is
the first remake. Well, the remake of Tomb Raider did that, didn't they? Like, so Lara Croft is like horrified that she's murdered someone, and then 2 seconds later, you just
yeah. And I mean, I think like I have like a small amount of insider knowledge about that, and I do feel like there were different interests working against each other during the development of that game, and I feel like there were several different visions for that game, and they were all kind of thrown into a bag like a bunch of cats, and it was just kind of survival of the fittest, like what kind of came out the other side. And again, that's part of the creative process, and I think it's one of those elements where games struggles because everything is just so hard to do all the time. Well, it's like you can't just like, you can't just quickly redo one part of it. It's because everything touches everything else, and it's all just like a system. But then once you've built the system, it's like that's a big part of your budget, so you go, well shit, we have to use it for something. And now, like, because we spent that money, it's like we don't have enough money to do this other thing properly, so we're going to do the thing that we don't want to do, but it's going to pad it out and increase the length, and that's got to give the people what they want. Got to give them their game per hour.
Well, no, I find it really interesting. I think the whole way that video games deal with kind of narrative and the way movies deal with narrative are really important, because they're really different. Like movies, we've talked about this before on the show, that like can you watch movies full of bad people doing bad things and like the film? And like with video games, it's that argument's actually amplified because you have to be the avatar in that film. In that game, and it may not allow you to do anything different than the game allows you to do.
Yeah, like GTA or something like that. Like,
exactly,
you have to do the bad thing.
And there's also always I know my limited knowledge, but World of Warcraft has that interesting way that because people attack it, they do little things like, I'm going to refuse to kill anyone, but I'm going to make it to top level. I'm going to do it by collecting herbs or doing side quests or whatever, or what have you, like doing those quests that are just, can you pick this up from this town for me? And people choose making that choice to actually play that game in a way they want to play it, rather than doing it in the way the game's designed. Which is, it's the wonderful freedom of actually video games and the wonderful freedom of that system, if that system allows you to kind of play that way. Hands up.
Aren't there the Metal Gear Solid games? You can actually complete some of those without actually killing
I guess
people.
technically. Not the way I fucking play it.
Because like, I think if it's Metal Gear Solid 3, there's this thing called the Walk of Sorrow or something like that. Like, I think it's like 2/3 of the way through the game, you're walking through this river, and if you kill a load of people, you see all the ghosts of those people you kill. Whereas if you kill no one, the walk is very short and you don't see anyone. So that's a big thing. I think Metal Gear Solid definitely. Also the Thief series, I think, and definitely the Dishonored series.
They actually stopped
like
playing
some games
when
give
I got to
you
the point when I couldn't not do it without killing people. They just put you in a place of the game where you had to kind of murder everyone to get out of it, and I was like, oh, I'm done. I got as far as this game I wanted to.
But the other side of that is there's a very famous scene in a Call of Duty game where you're playing a terrorist, and you and your evil terrorist friends walk into an airport and just start firing automatic weapons into the crowd. There's no real I think you can not shoot, and it does still like kind of complete. You know what I mean? I think. I can't remember exactly. Maybe you have to shoot, but you don't actually have to like hit anyone. I can't remember exactly. I'm sure someone out there knows. But yeah, there's elements like that where it's very much like, and there's a whole game about that as well, which is very similar to Call of Duty. And oh my god, the name, I'm totally blanking on the name, and that's really embarrassing because it's a really famous example of this, where the whole kind of game is basically about like giving yourself PTSD almost. Like you're a soldier in this awful situation, and it's all kind of like, it's all a very sort of liminal space where nothing's quite real, but you're like ordered to do things, but you don't have to do the things that you're ordered to do. But it's a video game, so we're trained to do these things that we're told to do in video games, and then the game like kind of judges you for it, and you're presented with all these like horrifying consequences to the actions that you're kind of in theory choosing to do. But there's there's a level of entrapment involved. Like when you turn the mirror around to the player and you go like, "Oh, you monster!
Look how evil you were. Look at you.
Look,
how you do evil stuff."
How could you do all of these things that we told you to do and put you in the situation to do and rewarded you for doing and gave you the tools to do?
It's like, have you seen that documentary on Netflix? What's the cat one?
Yeah,
about the cat.
Yeah. I was about to bring it up. The ending of that does that. Yeah, it's so infuriating. It turns back and go, but aren't we all the murderers? Because you like to watch this. Bye.
No. No, we're not. No, we're not at all.
What's it called? Don't fuck with cats.
Don't fuck with cats. Yeah.
I don't want to make light of obviously the hands that the military-industrial complex has on video games, because they're everywhere.
Sure, yeah.
They're totally in there. Same with big movies as well.
Yeah. Especially
the Avengers is essentially like it's essentially PR for the CIA at this point. And same as it ever was. In most cases, so I don't want to make light of that, but it is funny, and I feel like especially people in the video game industry give games an easy ride, and they say, "Oh, it's a young medium. It's a very young medium. We haven't been around for as long as like movies or televised series or all that, so you can't judge it by the same standards."
40 fucking
it's like,
years.
No, it's just bad.
Plus.
It's just bad. It's been around for ages. Yeah. So long. so long.
Anyway,
What's happening?
Don't say
What?
look, movies have been around longer. They should get it better. The movies don't get it better. Length of time
fact,
doesn't make a difference.
Movies have become more like video games now anyway, I think, or older video games, like where I don't know.
Aren't we all becoming video games, Oliver Jones? Don't we all live in the Matrix, which came out in this year, 1999, which is the year we're covering this year?
No, we can't get there yet. No, not yet. Liam,
What do you want to talk about, Ollie?
have you watched anything else this week?
Did I
Before
watch
we get into the main.
Oh, do you want to ask me that question? What did I watch this week?
Yeah, I want to ask you.
I watched Dog Day Afternoon this week.
Ah, well, good movie.
Yeah,
Great movie.
fantastic film. I was really loving it. Young Al Pacino can be in every film. That's what I decided.
Who plays the boyfriend in that?
I'll look it up.
Yeah, he's
I can't remember the top of my head.
such a fantastic. Have you seen it, Paul?
Do you know what? I feel like I watched it years ago and I don't really remember it.
So it's a true story, isn't it?
I'm like the worst person to. I'm like the worst person to be on a podcast about movies because I'm like, yeah, I've probably seen it, but I have no memory of anything.
It's Leon, the boyfriend. It was Chris Sarandon,
Yeah.
who you'll know from like Princess Bride.
Yeah, it's a Sidney Lumet movie. Yeah,
Sidney Lumet, yeah. It wasn't his follow up to no, it was years after 12 Angry Men. But yeah, it's based on bank robbery. This guy robbed a bank, but he was very nice, and the people started liking him basically.
Yeah.
And his appearances in the street and shouting at the cops and yelling about like the unfair like world he was in got him really loved by the public and the crowd and stuff like that, and his attacks on the press and stuff like that. So it's just this really, it's a tiny film because it's the scenes are literally the bank, the street, and then later on a bus basically.
yeah.
And it's all told through the main character's narrative about him kind of getting himself in a situation that can't possibly go well, but he seems to be kind of like everyone starts loving him for it. Like, and it's fantastic. It's well shot.
Because
it's beautiful.
spoilers, he's trying to get the funds so his boyfriend can have a sex change. Correct?
Not really.
Or
No,
I thought that's
well,
what it was.
it's
been a while.
complicated. His sexuality is complicated in the film, and obviously the trans woman narrative is complicated in the film because it was the 70s. But like, he's married twice. He's married to Leon, and he's married to his wife as well. He has kids with his wife. He seems to be abusing Leon because Leon doesn't want to talk to him, but he seems to be doing this to try and like tell Leon how much he means to him.
Is Leon involved in the robbery? I can't.
No.
remember. It's been a
Leon's
while.
just, they drag him out of they seem to abuse him. He seems to be in hospital or something like that. I think he might have gone to like rehab or something. But
Okay.
the narrative between he's gay but he wants like a sex change is the way it's worded. Like, the film never calls Leon she, which you would now because that seems to be what they were identifying with. But they sit there. There's this weird mix of not understanding what a transgendered person and a gay person is in the 1970s. So they're just kind of mashing them all together in this kind of, well, they're all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's, but it's I don't think it's the film being that bad. It's actually just it's the 1970s, and I think, and they present Sonny and they present Leon definitely as much more sympathetic. Like, Leon's really the most sympathetic in it, even when like the crowd cheering them and stuff like that is all presented really well. It's a really, really good film though. It's really worth it.
I'm just reading about the real true life story of it. Actually, seems very sad what happened in real life. I won't get into that now.
It really reminds me actually of something I read recently. Just clicked when you were kind of explaining the plot. I read a thing recently that basically says Stockholm syndrome isn't real.
Yeah,
It's not a real thing. Basically, what happened was some people were taken hostage. There was one woman in particular who the concept of Stockholm syndrome was focused on because when it came time, I apologize if I'm getting the details wrong, but when it came time for the people who were robbing the bank to leave and go away, she basically decided to stay with the bank robbers instead of going to the police. And interestingly enough, it was the guy who was the police negotiator was the guy who then later retroactively decided that this woman in particular had this syndrome that hit, like, I don't think it was called Stockholm syndrome at the time. It was named after the particular town that they were in, which is a different town. But yeah, so It was later renamed Stockholm Syndrome, but basically it was this guy who turned up as a police negotiator, and the police kind of bungled the whole thing and fucked up so badly that basically this woman was like, "I don't want to have anything to do with you. Like, stop! Don't do anything. You're gonna get us all killed. Like, just back up. Just leave. Just let them rob the bank.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like, I just don't want to die." And then this guy who basically, like, you know, ultimately it was his job to negotiate with these people and resolve the situation, you know, in the best way possible, kind of got arsey about it and was like, "Oh, well, obviously she's suffering from some kind of, like, delusion or whatever." And now every day, like, people talk about Stockholm Syndrome as if it's a real thing, and it's absolutely not. It's just, you know...
It was the police's completely
incompetence.
misreading. Yeah. And then just...
And, and the fragility of a man's ego in what he believes to be a position of authority, but actually... is undermined by a young woman.
That's another thing that I can talk about today.
That's
two things I want to come back to. So what have you watched this week, Jones?
I rewatched The Town with Caroline because she's never seen it before.
The Benny Affleck.
The Benny Affleck one. Yeah, it's a solid film. It's just a decent film. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it breaks new ground, but it's enjoyable. And I watched for the first time Yoga Hosers.
Oh dear.
It's,
Next, we're moving on.
Dude, I tell you what, if you thought, you know, we both thought that Jane Silent Bob reboot was bad, that makes it look like fucking, I don't know, Gone with the Wind. It's like bottom of the barrel stuff. It's so bad. It's like he watched Scott Pilgrim and got a few ideas from that, but didn't do it to half of the level that, well, not even a fraction of the level that
I can do that. It's easy. You just put sound effects on when things happen.
You just cut really fast.
Yeah, it's just.
Zoom into things and just fast cut.
It looked all right for one of his films, but it was pretty terrible. Oh,
well,
that's a shame.
I'm sorry you had to watch that.
Do you know what, mate? Gutted, because this week I watched The Matrix and I watched Into the Spider-Verse, and it was amazing.
Spider-Verse is so good. I kind of don't want them to do a sequel because I think that first film is just perfect as it is.
The first one's perfect. The first one is perfect.
Like, not that a sequel can ever ruin. Do you know what I mean? The first film's always going to be the first film, but I kind of like the fact it's just special. And I can't really say that. There are about 15 other Spider-Man films, to be honest, so it's not like I can really moan about it, but...
Yeah, but what makes it so special is the fact that it takes that Spider-Man kind of mythology and it does to the Spider-Man mythology in what my favourite comics always do with Legacy. Like they don't treat it as like this singular little narrative in like this person's life. They draw the camera out and go, but look, this is actually what you're part of. Like, and that was my favourite stuff about 90s comics, because like 90s comics, especially DC, had got into a problem where all their old characters were too old, so they basically went, shit, we need loads of new characters, and writers started coming on who didn't tackle that character in just this myopic kind of look. They tackled this character as part of this huge legacy of something really important. I think doing that now at this stage with cinematic Spider-Man is really cool, really important actually, to make sure that it keeps going forward and allows it allows us to keep experimenting and playing with what Spider-Man is or how we write Spider-Man stuff. And I think that was a really important step forward.
There's rumours that they're going to put the 3 live-action Spider-Mans in the next one, apparently. Because I think they did...
Tobey Maguire, come back.
Yeah. I'd see him again. I'd happily watch him put that spandex suit on again.
I was watching him... No, go on.
You were what?
That's the end of the sentence.
I was watching
him.
No, I am... my favourite thing about the Spider-Verse film is the fact that it was Tobey Maguire was the main Spider-Man, but they didn't tell you that. Like, that all the scenes they cut was stuff from Spider-Man 2 and things. And I really liked how it could have actually served as a reboot of the Spider-Man world from the Tobey Maguire films. I thought that was really smart and really... It made me kind of feel good, because it was something, you know, I love Spider-Man 2. I love that era, so it was really cool for me to see that echoed in that way.
I mean, just purely from an animation standpoint, it's just mind-blowing. And
it's sure as fuck, yeah.
I had to buy the French version of the film because it came with a 3D disc on it. And
Oh, amazing.
I'm not a fan of 3D films, but this film in 3D, I can't even tell you, man. It's just a whole nother level. It's incredible.
Did we watch it in 3D?
It is.
No, because you can't see 3D, so we watched it in 2D.
Dude.
I mean, for me, like, I think the obviously, just for me, like, as a film, I think the story aspect, absolutely, I totally agree. Like, looking at it as a legacy thing, because it is, and we should, like, that's the context that it exists in. You know, it really brought a fresh take on it. But then again, with the animation style as well, everything about it to me is a movie of, like, you know, really, like, in terms of Spider-Man movies, we're still talking about one of the biggest intellectual properties in the world. And to see the bravery and the confidence where they really, like, and it's just that, to me, it makes me laugh that it was up for the Oscar for Best Animated Film in the same year as The Incredibles 2. I love The Incredibles. I think it's great. I absolutely love it. But you put those two films together, it's laughable that they're, like, even nominated for the same award. And the fact that it was The Incredibles 2, like, it was a sequel. But that's what I mean about, like,
I did
Into
like
the Spider-Verse.
I like that sequel, but it is pretty much just the reverse of the first film. But I was happy enough with that, though, for The Incredibles 2, that is.
Well,
but,
not every film has to stand up and be kind of like groundbreaking. But Spider-Man was that, so that's what's funny. It's when you put them together. And actually, you were saying about the bravery to do that with such a huge property, which absolutely, because it wasn't meant to be a cinema release. It was meant to be just getting hidden on, like, some DVD release and stuff like that until people started seeing it that it was coming good. But actually, Phil Lord and Miller got onto that project after being let go from the Playmobil film, and the Playmobil people wouldn't trust them to take their property. Like, and do something really cool with it.
So they went from Lego to Playmobil.
Yep, they got fired from Lego not to do number 2, like, and then they
did they not do number 2?
No. And then they didn't trust, like, these properties didn't trust them to do something, and then they made this, like, Oscar.
Star Wars didn't trust them either.
I might be getting that little wrong. At least it's one of the it's one of the directors, not Miller and Lord and Miller. One of the directors was doing Playmobil, and he came off to do Spider-Man. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, because they just produced or wrote it. Didn't they?
They're kind of
The thing I was going to say to you, Liam, is you probably thought you saw it in 3D, because a lot of people thought they saw the 3D version just because of the way that the split RGB was in the film and stuff like that. And a lot of people didn't understand the style they were going for and just thought, oh, but I walked into the wrong screening. What were you going to say about?
Especially with that big final sequence where everything just goes
haywire,
just goes totally nuts. Like,
and
I love stuff like that, because it's just like, and it's funny. I think part of the reason I watched it this week is I think I was talking to you about it this week, Liam, about the idea of, like, you know, The Matrix. We watch it now, and, like, you know, there's elements of it that are a bit cheesy, but The Matrix totally redefined, like, how people think about action in movies.
Yeah,
but that's what I said after I watched Into the Spider-Verse. One of my friends asked me how it was, because I went to the cinema, and I said to them, I was like, this. If there's any justice in the world, it should redefine how people think about animation in the same way that The Matrix redefined how people thought about action.
We brought it up when we talked about
he
Perfect
laughed at
Blue,
me, but
the animated film we did this miniseries, because it was one of the only examples I could think of big studio, like, using animation in a way that wasn't just, you know, treated as a genre for kids. It was actually just using it in a way that animation can only be used for, and that's what was really smart about that. Anyway, we should move on to the fact that this is a miniseries, and we're making our way through the 90s, and now we've made our way to the end of that miniseries, 1999, the dawn of the millennium, and like 1999 is one of those years that are in kind of film mythology, basically, of a year that just it was unbelievably good in the film output, and unbelievably kind of powerful actually in the films it's made. We've already mentioned The Matrix, which I think we could honestly spend 10 podcasts itself talking about The Matrix. It changed the world, but and even after it, the way that its narratives can be looked at differently and the way it's changed and morphed through those years is still really important. I mean, I guess they're not shooting at the moment, but we are getting to see a new Matrix come up in the next few years.
I think The Matrix got a bad rap for a while afterwards, though, just purely for the fact that people copied Like, I don't think people took what was really great about The Matrix. They just took it on a surface level and just took the flipping bullet time and then trench coats or leather clothing. And they didn't actually take away from it what actually made it incredible.
What made it work for people and what made it sing to people and what made it like really people think about it constantly. That whole like Matrix syndrome, is that what they used to call it? When people gone to see the film and decided they were now living in a kind of Matrix world. And
it's a bit like people who saw Avatar and they're obsessed. They wanted to live in Pandora and shit like
that. The Matrix syndrome thing I think is super interesting because for me personally, like I think a big part of the reason that was a thing is because actually watching that movie was the closest a lot of people have ever come to class consciousness.
Probably.
And I think that like it's such an easy message, isn't it? Because it's like, what if you've been lied to your whole life?
Yeah.
What if your existence as an individual is meaningless because all you are is a battery to power this horrific, unfeeling machine that seems to only actually really exist for the purpose of like like it doesn't seem to have any other agenda other than, you know, controlling people. And the parallels are so easy to, you know, to things like Brave New World in 1984, and that's why I think people looked at it and were like, oh my god, man, it's like, you know, what if it is true? And I think so many people were just like, they were just a step away. It's like, okay, that's the sci-fi, but what does it say about the real world? Like, how does the way that you feel about this movie, like, what does that say about your relationship to power?
It's really funny that the two of the angles that come out of that is the darker side, which is the red pill side, which they take the wrong message from that kind of scene, and they call like red pilling is a bad thing about like, but they think they're being like progressive in their ways. But also the fact that now it's read as such a strong trans narrative, that whole film is, especially because it was made by two trans filmmakers. And they might not have been realising they were putting these narratives in, but I'd recommend Emily Vanderwerf's article in Vox about this because it's absolutely spectacular. But like the whole push through of it's about reclaiming your identity, it's about deciding who you are and taking that narrative forward. And even the fact that Agent Smith dead names about the entire film, that's him trying to reduce Neo's power in the film and trying to cut him down. Is spectacular the way that really feels strong watching it, and it feels really important still. And then it's incredible The Matrix does that. The Matrix, you know, out of all films.
It's just crazy how your subconscious can work, that they wrote a film not realising what they were... I
guess they were working through some stuff in their head, probably, and stuff comes out, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, because it feels like at the very foundation, it's an examination of like an individual's relationship to power. Yeah. And of course, part of that is, you know, gender identity, is sexuality, like all of these things, you know, they're all vectors by which we are oppressed, you know. So I think it's, you know, to me, it's not surprising that those things are like readable within it.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, it is interesting how different people's minds kind of arrive at places. I love it.
And it's quite funny, actually, talking about trans narratives again. My favourite film of the entire year is Being John Malkovich, which
I was going to just mention that.
Just a spectacular film again, like, and dealing with that same sort of stuff in a kind of narrative way that I'm not totally sure other films have ever done, or even got.
Well, yeah, because it's got the whole subplot of when Cameron Diaz uses the body and things like that.
She's discovering her own gender identity through that as well, and preferring to live that way and seeing that through. It's
such a good film.
Do you know what it was? It's Charlie Kaufman, his name, isn't it? Who wrote it? Is that right? Yeah. I owe him so much because I stole so much of his work when I was borrowed, was influenced by so much of his work when I was at university. Along with a bunch of other people, obviously, but just a spectacular way of looking at the world. Just really like showing the power of film as a narrative.
Yes, yeah.
You know, being able to like visually, visually tell these narratives in a way that like you'd struggle with in any other medium.
in doing it the same way.
To be able to do that, and those are things again similar to the Matrix. Like those are things that's to me is where film is at its best. Like when it couldn't be anything else.
One of my like adaptation for me is as a masterpiece by him. That him taking that book and turning it into a narrative film in a completely different way than anyone could ever expected anyone to take a book, and I think it's captivating in a way that I find hard to get other films like do the same stuff. Really,
I was going to say, didn't Boys Don't Cry come out this year as well?
Yeah, it did. Another great trans story, which is a wonderful film. Actually, Boys Don't Cry. It's a horrible film though. It's hard to watch.
Hey, we're skipping the greatest film of this year though, The Phantom Menace. How excited were you though? I know I was very excited for this film, and the fact that me and Liam got told off in the cinema for lightsaber fighting with our the cinema magazines that you got like as you walked in telling you like the new releases. I know we rolled those up into lightsabers and we got told off for fighting with each other in the,
I don't remember that.
Halls. I do.
I don't remember anything.
I mean, to be fair, you've done that every single time we've been to the cinema together, no matter what movie it was.
Well, once was Ollie throwing like magazines at me as Batarang. So it was slightly different.
I cried at Paul after we saw The Dark Knight. I was like, it's so good. It's so amazing.
Oh, God. I tell you what, that was an experience.
Well, watching me cry.
No, I've seen you cry loads of times. No, it's like...
That's not true. Ollie doesn't cry.
No. I think like a big part of that for me is like as someone who's always been like a bit into nerdy stuff, like not so much into the comics like as much as Jones is, but always kind of like had one foot in that with like, playing war games and being into fantasy literature and all that kind of stuff. I think just like going and seeing Batman Begins was huge for me because it really felt like it was just so like straight faced. It was like we're taking this seriously. And Batman Begins I thought was great. And I went into The Dark Knight, even after seeing the trailers and stuff, I was kind of like, it's probably not going to be as good as Batman Begins. Like, they probably used up a lot of their ideas, and now it's just going to be like, oh, whatever.
Do you remember the controversy of Heath Ledger's casting as well? Do you remember how just absolutely like just rabid ridiculous. People were? Yeah. This how dare this young sexy guy be the Joker and
but they're doing it again to Pattinson, aren't they? They're doing it again to him now.
Which is mad because that guy, like, I mean,
act.
okay, Twilight, fine.
So
like
what?
he did a series of movies that you don't like. Okay,
he's really good
fine.
in Twilight.
When he was
but
like 20,
he's really good in Twilight. So
the first one's all right. I didn't mind it. And the third one's
fine,
okay.
It's fine. It's just like they're movies for young people. It's fine.
So
but like it gets way too much hate because it was popular with a demographic that a lot of movie nerds don't identify with. Let's be honest. That's why it gets like the hate that it gets.
But it's the same. Like I was thinking about Heath Ledger because this is 10 Things I Hate About You came out in 1999, which I watched it this week actually. Which I watched it with a bunch of friends, and they got annoyed at me yelling "smooch" constantly at the screen. But like, he's wonderful in that film. He's like, and you can all those elements of how he manages to kind of, I don't know, take over a screen and dominate his presence and stuff like that. And you can see it from very first thing, 10 Things I Hate About You, to Brokeback, to like Dark Knight is all there for him. And the fact that people couldn't see that is ridiculous. But as you say, people aren't even seeing it with Patterson. And you can see Patterson in that good time and stuff like that, and see how much he can absolutely be charismatic and dominate
the Lighthouse
something. And the Lighthouse,
absolutely.
Yeah. And
I mean, I don't want to downplay, like, even though Heath Ledger as the Joker was obviously brilliant, I think it's important not to downplay like how much Chris Nolan had a hand in that as well. Like, I think like so much of it was already on the page. Like if you look at like the decisions that Heath Ledger made as an actor, obviously they're great, but like he didn't walk into a room and just say, "I'm going to make this pencil disappear," and everyone was like, "Oh my god, what's he going to do?" You know what I mean? Like it was all there. The construction, the power dynamics, the way the plot is driven through the kind of nihilistic nature of everything. You know, all of this, the thematic elements of it. That's all there. That structure around him that allows him to really kind of flourish in this role.
Well, Ledger very much did the kind of like Johnny Depp thing. You know, like how for Pirates he based his performance on what's the Rolling Stones guy?
Thingy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what
Keith.
you mean. He's in one of the pirate movies. Keith.
I can't remember what it's called.
Anyway, have you seen the Tom Waits interview from the 70s where he's like on an Australian chat show and he's like completely pissed?
No.
Watch that video and you can tell that
yeah.
Ledger based his performance on that Tom Waits interview because his inflections, the way he acts, his sounds, that's what he's channeling in that film. You can really tell.
I have a growing level of popularity throughout the intercontinental United States, Japan, and I travel extensively in Europe as well.
Let's wind the clocks back a year. These cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you. I mean, what happened? Your balls drop off?
I love him even leaning into the prosthetics because it made it difficult for him to kind of speak without kind of sounding kind of like he had the prosthetics, so he just leant into it. So you get that kind of from him because he's meant to be dealing with these internal scars all the time, and I think it just works so well.
What else?
It really does.
What else came out this year? So we've
So much.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, what about the long-term influence of the Blair Witch Project? Because that was huge. Like even in '99, like this year for movies, even in '99, it was at the time the Blair Witch Project was
along
like,
with Matrix, Blair Witch, along with Phantom Menace, frankly, but along with them, Blair Witch is one of those films that changes the film industry. Blair Witch changes horror forever. We're still dealing with what Blair Witch did, in the fact that
such a good point. You know what? I don't really watch horror, so that's probably why. I thought that question was more interesting.
Didn't the Cannibal Holocaust though? But wasn't that a found footage film though as well?
I guess that was found footage, yeah. But like nothing built up Blair Witch the way that did. That it popularised found footage in a way that is just remarkable. It popularised that kind of underground marketing of stuff because they were the first film really to have a website that people had to flock to. So they had websites that came up months and months and months before the film came out about pushing this legend of the Blair Witch and things. The kind of theory about the way he treated the actors as well, the fact that they aren't really acting, they actually were scared on set and they were terrified and they were just given instructions by notes and stuff like that in the field means that the performances were heightened and stuff, and all that stuff, and the fact that it cost nothing for them to make and made billions, all kind of comes together to make this that ruins the film industry. It doesn't ruin it, but it just means that everyone is trying to replicate it continuously. And I think because of that, people get fed up with the Blair Witch. People say that Blair Witch isn't very good, but I think it really holds up. I think even watching it now, it really works as a horror film. I think it has every element in it still. I mean, the sequels were awful, but I think they had something right with the Blair Witch.
I'm just looking at a list of all the films that came out this year. Like, it's insane. Audition, Man on the Moon, Green Mile, Girl Interrupted...
Fight Club.
Another film, Fight Club, that ruined the world, yeah.
Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest is wonderful.
Toy Story 2, Talented Mr.
Talk of film
Ripley.
making choices. Talented Mr. Ripley is my second favourite film this year, yeah.
Oh, The Iron Giant came out, which is my favourite animated film of all time.
Brad Bird, we talked Incredibles already, yeah. And I enjoy it, it's wonderful. Best Superman film ever made.
Yeah. Superman.
The one... Influential films, American Pie.
Yeah,
yes.
Which has a relation to today as well, I guess, because it's one of the actors is in that.
That's true.
Oh, shit.
And I'd say they pretty much play the same part.
Pretty much. And
mostly.
And Sixth Sense came out this year as well. We're talking of horror films that changed the world.
Yeah.
The idea of a twist ending was what people tried to do forever after the Sixth Sense.
Have I told you how I ruined the Sixth Sense for myself?
For yourself?
I don't
have, I think, but go on.
I'll say it for the podcast quickly, but like for some reason, I do not know why. I don't know why. I didn't work it out. I'm not a wizard. I don't know M. Night Shyamalan personally, and he ruined it for me. But for some reason, when I went in to watch that film, I thought that Bruce Willis was a ghost, and that was the point of the movie. And I was so confused.
You finished and went, that was the point.
Paul is a genius.
I was like, it's not. Oh, it's not a ghost. Oh no, maybe he is. Oh no, but it's not. But what's happening?
I remember going around to Paul's once, and we all sat down. We watched Cars. None of us had seen it. Just come out on DVD or whatever. And Paul, like within the first few minutes, was like, "Right, this is how it's going to go down. This is going to happen. 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 Watch." And then it just played out exactly as Paul said. And I was like,
my wife gets so annoyed with me about that. Like, but it's just, I mean, that's not hard to do, is
not
it?
For
like,
cars.
if you wonder exactly, like it's a kids movie, and like, I mean, like if you're aware of tropes and story structure, you know what I mean? Like it is funny. Like it's a good party trick sometimes with people who aren't as into that kind of stuff. Like to be able to do it, and they're like, oh my god, like,
guess you banned from.
But how did you do it? It's like, because capitalism has destroyed any kind of creative endeavor. But yeah.
Okay, as I say, we could talk about 1999 forever.
We could just do a whole podcast series dedicated to that.
There is a podcast that just does films from 1999.
Totally. Man on the Moon got mentioned, and I didn't even say anything. And that movie has been a huge influence for me, like personally. So
bullshit. My line. Bullshit.
Exactly.
So this week we're approaching the end of our miniseries. We've gone throughout the whole 90s, and we're down to 1999, as we've been saying. And this week's Alexander Payne's Election.
In the nation's capital, a new leader has found a place in the halls of power. But her story began in the halls of high school.
We'll move on now to the presidential race with 3 candidates running. The first is Tracy Flick.
One thing that's important to know about me is that I'm an only child. My mom is really devoted to me. She likes to write letters to successful women like Elizabeth Dole and Connie Chung and ask them what advice do they have for me, Tracy, her daughter.
The next candidate for student body president is Paul Metzler.
I just don't think somebody would do something like that on purpose.
I think you did it.
And if you want to keep questioning me like this, I won't continue without my attorney present. I do not often speak with you and ask for things, but now I really must insist that you help me win the election tomorrow, because I deserve it and Paul Metzler doesn't, as you well know.
The final candidate, sophomore Tammy Metzler.
I'm attracted to the person. It's just that all the people I've ever been attracted to happen to be girls.
You should stop her. She's not qualified.
We can't both run, can we? I mean, we're brother and sister. Can we? Tracy and I are totally in love.
In love?
Yeah.
So is this a moral situation or an ethical situation?
When I win the presidency, that means you and I are going to be spending a lot of time together.
Cast your vote for Tracy Flick next week. You won't just be voting for me. You'll be voting for yourself.
Who knew how high she would climb in life? I had to stop her.
Excuse me! Will you please be quiet?
Election is an adaptation of a book by the same name, and it's a black comedy that revolves around the election of a student body president in a high school. The film stars Matthew Broderick, who plays Mr. Jim McAllister. He's a really popular high school civics teacher, and he takes it on himself to sabotage the campaign of Tracy Flick, who is played by Reese Witherspoon. She's an aggressively overachieving and driven student who he really personally dislikes. In order to do this, he backs another candidate, Paul Meltzer, played by Chris Klein. He's a really simple but privileged student who is a very popular high school quarterback, and the whole film then revolves around how that election plays out.
I will say when I watched the trailer for this movie, I did have a certain amount of expectations, because I think it's like one of those weird, like, old-timey American ones where it's like they talk about the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
But I think because obviously they're trying to sell it through the trailer as something quite familiar. So then I had this idea of it. I was like, okay, so it's like a kind of Gen X teen movie, and it's going to be this like adversarial relationship between the two people, and like in a lot of ways, like I feel like somehow the marketing kind of really undersells what this movie is.
Agreed.
So this film actually didn't make much of an impact when it came out. It was a flop. it really didn't. It didn't make a lot of money at all. It kind of
Well,
got buried
I was
in
looking.
this year.
So the budget said it says it's between 8.5 million and 25 million. That's quite a difference.
That's Matthew Broderick's coke habit.
Only made 17 million, I think, at the box office. So yeah, but it got good reviews though.
It got fantastic reviews, and since then its legend has just grown. It's become a big cult classic, something that people bring up every single election cycle. The characters in this film become kind of stereotypes that people shit out memes about and stuff like that. It's one of those films that's managed to sink itself into the cultural kind of zeitgeist a little bit, especially in America more than over here, I'd say. But I was really interested in going back to that, and I think the legacy. I think the film reads different in the 90s than it does watching it now. But I mean, what did you think of the film?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and I've watched it twice since. Well, because I kind of made a mistake on the last podcast. I was in a grumpy mood last week, and the film we watched, which was Last Days of Disco, and I only watched it the once, and I was in a bad mood, and I just didn't kind of get anything out of the film. And then chatting to Liam about it, I kind of thought, I want to give this another go. And I watched it again, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more, and I kind of got a lot more out of it. So I thought, I'm going to watch this twice, but I got I didn't get everything out of the first viewing, but I just loved it from the first viewing anyway.
I could see it when watching it through that it might be one of those films that I could easily keep watching, and stuff then just becomes kind of like canon to me. That some of the lines just become something that I know is coming up and I can quote and stuff like that. I kind of got that impression from the film.
I mean, for me, the big thing watching it is like it's great. It's great to see something that is so relevant still, decades after it was made. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I feel like, having watched it so recently, I feel like I've seen the film in, like, I've seen the 2020 version of that film, but there is also a 1999 version of that film that I haven't seen and can never see because I can't go back in time and see it then. And I do think, like, I think it's very important when talking about a film like this that feels so relevant and so current now. It's like, okay, well, why did it also feel relevant then?
Yeah, I wanted to give some context.
Maybe it didn't feel as relevant. Maybe that's why it wasn't such a big success right away. Like, maybe it needed a little bit more time to kind of like percolate and, you know, for people to kind of get their head around these ideas. Because I guess, like, you know, from my imagination of an American perspective in the late 90s, in the political climate of like the end of the Clinton era.
Well, that's the thing. This film comes out 2 years after the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and all you need to know about that is that it's called the Monica Lewinsky scandal, not the president had sex with someone with his intern scandal. Like, and this film is
not the president's massive abuse of power scandal.
And the very fact that this is written in that climate is kind of sewn into this story. Very much so in the treatment of like Reese Witherspoon's character, who I think in the 90s was displayed as the villain in this film, really. But I think watching it now, she very much isn't, or at least she's a hell of a lot more sympathetic in my reading of the film. And I think that has, at least the way that film's changed and percolated over the last 20 years, I think people have started reading that. And it's not actually, I think that actually is the audience reading of it. I actually think it's sewn into the seeds of the film itself. And we're talking about different narratives earlier, and kind of dissidence in narratives and stuff. And I think one of the complicated things about this film is that it's full of dissidence. That's the whole point of the film, that you've got all these unreliable narrators coming out of the film who are, you know, not saying what they actually think in their heads. They are completely unreliable in the way they talk about it. The way Matthew Broderick talks about how he feels about life and how he feels about other characters is not his actions in the film. And
I think one of my favourite lines is when Reese Witherspoon is just like, "It didn't bother me at all."
Yeah, totally. And like, even the
Matthew Broderick has one of those as well, isn't it? When I mean, I think, like, and I totally get what you're saying, Liam, but I think for me the interesting thing about it is like, maybe I'm wrong about like what unreliable narrator really means, but I think that like all of the voiceovers and stuff, it's like, if they are lying, they're only lying to themselves.
That's what
like,
I mean.
do think they
That's what I mean.
Exactly. Okay, cool. because I do think they absolutely believe everything
Yeah.
that they say, like on the voiceovers.
Oh, I absolutely
even,
think that like Matthew Broderick's character thinks that he is the victim in this film, and I absolutely believe that he
Yes,
thinks
yeah.
like he was in the right the entire time. I think that's absolutely what he believes, and I think because the film presents you as him as the narrator, I think people can leave the film feeling that. But I think when watching it back now, it was like, oh no, that's not what he's doing. I think a really good example of this is right at the start. We'll go through the film, we'll bash through it, but right at the start when it's showing Reese Witherspoon's abuse, with the way that the teacher abused her, and the narrator's coming through Reese Witherspoon's herself, telling you about how she had agency in it, and how she was kind of into it and loved him and stuff like that. But all the
it's
actions,
gross the way he grooms her.
yeah,
It's
all the
horrible.
actions on screen are absolutely
it's horrible.
him grooming her, and like to an absolute T. Like he separates her out, reduces her kind of self-image, and right before they actually go have sex, she's sitting in that kind of his living room of his house with the kids' toys.
With all the
and
toys, yeah.
She's got like a little root beer like a child, and then they go off to like have sex, and it's just like that was so horrible. But the narration was unreliable because the narration was there with Reese Witherspoon's character telling herself that she was in control of this and it was her idea and stuff.
I love how one of the incidences at the beginning sets up the end, which you kind of forget by the end. So it starts off with Matthew Broderick's character. He's like he wants to make life very comfortable for himself, doesn't he? So like he's got his lunch for food, and he opens the fridge and it's full. So yeah, so he throwing away people's food to make life more comfortable for him, so he can put his food in there. But that's exactly what he does to Tracy. He throws away her dreams just to make life comfortable for him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think it's a really like interesting discussion to be had, like what exactly about Tracy makes him uncomfortable. Because one of the things I was really surprised about this movie going into it, like, I mean, obviously there's the very shocking moment, you know, with Tracy's abuser, is Dave, I've got his name written down here, like when, like obviously the big kind of shocking line from him that makes you go, oh my God, but also this kind of like focus on this like psychosexual fixation at the same time as like being annoyed with her and everything. And I think that's one of the elements that to me really differentiates it. Like in the 90s, I feel like this was meant to read as Matthew Broderick is kind of like this sad like clown figure whose like life is falling apart, and it's meant to be this almost like Schadenfreude thing of like, oh, isn't he silly? Like, oh, he's you know, the master of his own downfall and everything. But I think now in 2020, Matthew Broderick to me plays as a very scary, dangerous character. Particularly in the scene where I think it's meant to be playing as them like sparring against each other, where he essentially blackmails her by saying that he'll make public like the fact that she was a victim of abuse, which is an incredible character moment for Tracy because of the like unreliable narrative thing, where like Tracy Flick is, in a lot of ways, I think she's an incredibly multifaceted character. Like as a character, I think she's really interesting.
I do.
But she's definitely a victim in many ways in her life. In many ways, like her awful overbearing mother who does not know how to empathize with her daughter at all. A father who abandoned her. You know, one of the people in a position of authority over her, you know, sexually abuses her. And then now she has Matthew Broderick, who is following a very similar pattern of this other guy, but instead of like, you know, thinking that he's in love with her, he's like actively threatening her and like making out like he's an enemy, but at the same time having a very explicit psychosexual fetishized view of her at the same time, which he is aware of.
Yeah, but he's not admitting it to himself either. Like that, he never talks about it in his head. It's just something that we watch play out in the film, but he never admits to himself that he feels that way. And he just,
but we're meant to dislike Tracy Flick because she's a bit annoying.
Because she's annoying,
you know.
Yeah.
And she's and she's like, there is like, you know, there's elements where, you know, she's talking about how Matthew Broderick, I should use the character name, how Jim McAllister's like life is very kind of sad, and how she sort of feels sorry for him because he just goes to work every day and blah blah blah, and it's kind of like, it's just a shitty thing to think about people, really.
But that's because Tracy refuses to see herself as a victim in this, and that's what's like that's unappealing because she's hardworking. You know, she participates, she refuses to back down. Like, and these are all things that are meant to be applaudable, but when presented in this way, she's presented as the villain. Whereas Mr. M is,
and she's confused by it as well. Whenever anyone reacts negatively to her, she doesn't understand, and she is a bit shit. Like she kind of like. As I am doing now, she'll like talk over people and she'll shout people down. She's a bit shitty and classist in that social climber kind of way. I guess like the thing with
Chris Klein's posters, and it's got that awesome music from Navajo Joe from Sergio Leone with the Indian cries and stuff like that. I love that track.
Oh God, yeah.
She's kind of immoral, but not like what's the crux of the film? The lecture at the start. She's being immoral, but she's not being unethical. Morality. And like you were saying about the way that I think Mr. M in this is that kind of monster. He's this archetype which now I think we all know, but back in 1999 we wouldn't have seen it, in this nice, honest, humble, earnest man. In the fact that he's a monster, he's not something to be loved in this. He internalizes everything and kind of strikes out to ruin everything just because.
I was interested since you mentioned the whole like ethics versus morality thing. I mean, I think this movie's very clever, but I don't think it's very subtle.
No,
like I think it does kind of like it bangs you on the head. I thought it was interesting. So going into it, I was like, okay, this teacher is giving a lesson on ethics versus morality. How is that going to play into the rest of the film? Like, obviously, and then people start making these political choices, and it's like, okay, so it's going to be about like ethics and morality and politics and stuff. But I feel like it kind of like it doesn't know what its message is about that, and I think the justification for that might be the scene which did actually make me laugh with the apples versus oranges.
I was about to talk about that. I love that scene a lot.
Yeah. I feel like this is such a like Gen X movie in that very Gen X nihilistic way of like everything's as bad as everything else. Caring about anything is the worst thing you can do. Yeah. There's no point being nice. There's no point being good, and it's all just shit all the way down. And I feel like again, like watching that as a non-Gen X person in 2020, like the nihilism almost just makes it feel like it doesn't have a point.
Sure.
Like there's like it's just kind of floundering, and like things are just sort of happening.
Well, the funny thing about the nihilism undercurrent is that's his sister's kind of like angle on it, which I can talk about a little bit later, I guess, some points about her. But she picks up this kind of nihilist vote in saying that who cares about elections, who cares about voting, like vote for me, and she actually wins the election,
and she wins
because she has the bigger
290
but that to me
even
was
though
such that kind
aren't they told they can't vote for her, but they still do anyway.
They still do, and that for me that was the whole kind of anti-establishment kind of vote that's been coming like percolating through Britain for the last like 20 years, and then America. It leads to stuff like Trump, and people think they're voting for the person who's going to tear down the system rather than anything else. Even though I absolutely would have voted for her in high school, but I see how that even plays into that kind of elements, that this is part of that political sphere. And this does warn about the fact that this film was only a year away from the kind of voting scandal in Florida when Bush versus Gore. And this film is about the fact that the nice, humble, earnest people who are meant to keep stuff working actually are going to fuck this up because they have their own agenda, but they think they're doing it for the good. And it kind of saw that coming through.
I did. I won all my school council elections at school with the Tammy method.
Did you? I don't remember having school elections. I was going to bring that up. I didn't know if it was a thing.
I think it's more of an American thing.
I'm sure it was.
But it's total CV padding. Like, nothing happens. You know what I mean? Like there's no.
Well, that's how you got to where you are.
I mean,
today.
That's the thing. That's the thing. It's funny because obviously it's such a low stakes scenario.
Yeah.
But also, again, it means that like Tammy is like literally correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the broader sense of politics, she's wrong.
Yeah.
But in the specific text, she is absolutely right, and that's what I mean. It's like this kind of nihilist idea just sort of.
You say low stakes, but would Matthew Broderick's character really be fired or forced to resign in real life if he'd actually done those things? Because I know the book of this is actually based on 2 real events, isn't it?
You know what? In 1999, maybe. Now? Like, no.
I mean, I know in America it's a lot easier to fire people. I'd say probably in the UK, like, I don't think any of the staff would give a shit.
Yeah.
I think if a janitor came to like a senior staff at school and was like, "I found these
I don't care.
in the bin,"
The family of
like,
Paul and Tammy were big influential people in town, though, so they might be able to lean on the school if they felt particularly aggrieved. I know that he was cheating on behalf of Paul, but if maybe that could be an element when they were like, "You're bringing our name into disrepute, thinking that we have to cheat to win stuff and stuff."
So as I said, this is actually based on 2 real events, isn't it?
So
one was in 1992. There was a pageant in Wisconsin where a student was elected the homecoming queen, but the staff announced a different winner and burnt ballots.
Oh, God.
And
they burned them.
Yeah,
amazing.
And it's also based on the presidential election in 1992, where is it Ross Perot? Yeah, entered a third candidate, which I guess is the Tammy character.
Sure. Okay.
The spoiler.
Yeah.
That's funny. I mean, I guess probably from what I know about American culture, like I think the whole sort of pageantry of democracy is like, you know, that's a much more kind of sacred thing, isn't it? And you know, even though they have some of the worst voter suppression in the world, like.
Do you know what is homecoming? I don't know what homecoming.
I think it's the last home game of the season for the sports team. I believe
that's true. Yeah, because it's
and
all
that's
about sports.
I'm not totally sure, but they make like a big.
And that's different to prom king and queen, then I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Because prom is like the actual end of the academic year, isn't it? So
it's after the graduation, isn't it?
I guess homecoming is sports prom. Maybe.
I don't know.
If only we could ask someone who might. If only there was an American that we could communicate with.
I like we should talk about the Paul character as well, because I thought he was a really good character of that. The way he's never ever wanted for anything in his life. Like, he's unable to pick what his favourite fruit is because he just gets everything he wants. People come up to him and give him a car, or give him a blowjob, or give him like quarterback, or give him running for the president. Like, he doesn't know what he likes because he just gets the best stuff shoved at him. And I love how that's such a good politician thing. That's such a thing that happens to people we elect who have never wanted or thought about what their actual policies are. But you'll be really good. Do this. Like, and
I don't know if you caught this though, but you know, like when it shows his like skiing accident, it cuts to stock footage, and his jacket is totally different in that shot to the one he's wearing beforehand, which I really like.
That's such like the filmmaker comment. I love that. No, I did not.
I didn't notice that either.
It's like when he goes to New York, they use stock footage for that as well. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
I did notice that one. That's something. For some reason, my brain always like gives me a little poke and goes, "Oh."
Apparently, there's
stock footage.
So yeah, what are you going to say, Liam? Though about Paul?
I was done. I was going to say
I have a point about Paul, which again goes back to the ethics versus morality thing, where Paul, as far as I can tell, never does anything wrong.
No, he even votes for
Does he?
Even votes for Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, and not for any reason other than like he just feels like it would be wrong. So to make sure, like he doesn't know,
he doesn't actually know.
To make sure he doesn't do the wrong thing. I mean, arguably the worst thing he does in the whole movie is the very first thing he does, where he says like, "Oh, I was so angry at God." Like that's literally like I was trying to think of everything.
He does point out to his sister though that she's
premarital sex. I don't know. What's that?
He does like kind of like when he's chatting to his sister, like he makes sure that she knows she's adopted. Like,
yeah, that's kind of shitty. That is shitty. But that's a weird scene.
Yeah.
In general,
I forgot about
that scene feels inconsistent to me because it very rapidly goes from him like he doesn't really want to do it, and then he's kind of really chill about it, and then suddenly he's like mercenary about it. And I don't know if there's like a missing scene of like the I forget her name, but like the girlfriend.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know, maybe like Lisa. If there was a little bit more of her like kind of manipulating him maybe.
I loved it when it would cut to his scenes and it'd be like that, like I was surprised the day Lisa Flanagan asked me for a ride home and ended up blowing me.
I tell you, what do people think of Chris Klein as an actor?
I only know him from this in American Pie, but
because he's very similar character, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I liked him. He played this character.
Go on YouTube. He was in Street Fighter Chun-Li or something like that. It was a Street Fighter Chun-Li movie, and he's like second or third build. And there's a compilation on YouTube of all of his lines, and he's got 1 minute and 50 seconds worth of lines in the entire 2-hour film. You need to, watch it. His acting choices are so bizarre.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do Street Fighter Chun-Li or whatever, then just go nuts.
Just make all the choices.
You know what I mean?
Do a Benicio del Toro.
Exactly.
A lot of the American Pie actors did a lot of films like this in the early 2000s or before. So Tara Reid was in The Big Lebowski. You had the one girl who was in American Beauty.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I felt this film did feel a lot like a lot of those films of that era. I thought it had a definite vibe of kind of like a little bit off center.
Oh yeah, I mean this Alexander Payne's second film, isn't it? So he did Citizen Ruth first, which is Laura Dern, which is a similar sort of like satirical politics thing, and then he comes into this, and I like the way he does the tonal shifts and transitions. Do put you off balance. That's like all his films. Sideways is the same. About Schmidt, and I don't like The Descendants and Downsized. I haven't watched it. It's meant to be awful.
No, I haven't seen Downsized.
Like he does do that kind of weird. He does knock you off base of what you think you're going to be watching and stuff. Even the fact that it takes 40 minutes of this film to get into the plot. It does is it about 40 minutes of just introductions, and it's just going through and it's setting the table all the way through. It's not worrying that you're going to get fed up with it. It's just going to keep jumping from narrative to introducing people's point of view before it
uses a lot of kind of film tricks that are fun. So it's got loads of freeze frames where people like freeze on derpy faces, and then it will cut to like a flashback, and it uses like voiceovers, overlay. I like the use of overlays, like when he's having sex with his wife, and then all of a sudden you see the next door neighbour's head pop in overshot, almost like it's badly photoshopped, like when she's doing her Photoshop.
I thought that. Yeah,
and then you talk about Reese Witherspoon comes into over the shot and stuff like that, and there's the book which opens up and it's kind of got like all the kind of like the zippy kind of photo cutaways and stuff like that of Reese Witherspoon's character and stuff like that. So it kind of exists in that kind of filmy universe where kind of it uses film language to help tell the story, and it's not just like a straight film.
I think it feels really Midwest though. I mean, I haven't been to the Midwest. I know
a lot of his films are like set in Nebraska, though, aren't they?
Yeah, but I feel like it's attention to detail. I feel like you'd recognise this, and you'd recognise how like these people exist and people there, and the school feels real. It feels like it's in an actual place and stuff like that. I think all these films do that kind of similar kind of obsession with that Middle America type area. I think he gets that quite well.
It's almost got that Minnesota nice to because all the characters are nice on the surface, but they're underneath that. Like I think even Reese Witherspoon's some of her inflections have that kind of, because Nebraska's quite close to Minnesota, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think
so
it's just below it,
got some.
I don't know. It's all American to me. But yeah, it does feel like I don't know. Everything feels lived in.
Yes.
Like all his car.
Like nothing feels like a set. Like,
what was that car?
Oh yeah,
I don't know. It had a weird seatbelt thing.
Liam wants
what
one.
Was that?
But the seatbelt was weird the way it moved.
The seatbelt kind of automated round the door. Like, what the hell was that? That's not a car that's ever existed. I refuse to believe that existed.
It's funny. This is just me thinking out loud, but I find it funny how he has this like tiny car, like even by our standards as like Europeans, you know what I mean? Like it's this tiny little car, which in America in the 90s must have seemed totally absurd,
especially in the Middle America.
And then at the end of the movie, this is totally thinking out loud. I haven't thought about this at all, but then at the end, he ends up in that tiny little apartment in New York, and he says it's nice not to have a car. But it's cozy, and I find that interesting. Like, I wonder if that's like a choice based on his character, of like the idea of him like actually feeling trapped or feeling like he had this kind of, like he was living this very small life that for some reason he wanted to break out of. And I love the scene as well. probably the bit that I don't know how funny it was meant to be, but when he's like sitting having dinner with his wife and he's like, "We're best friends, like it's great, we're closer than ever," and they're just sat there like really, really quiet. And
do you think
like
when he gets stung by the bee, that's like pretty unsubtle kind of metaphor? Like he's been stung, like he's been.
Have you ever seen a film called Star Wars, James?
Yes.
I mean, I think that's obviously a joke, but I think it's obviously like a kind of visual shorthand for his kind of fall from grace, isn't it? Like
it looked good though. His eye was all like...
beast. I thought it was a good beasting. I wrote down here what are the best beasting films.
What are your thoughts on Matthew Broderick though as an actor?
I don't like Matthew Broderick very much, actually.
Nah, I mean,
I really don't like Ferris Bueller. I have to say it.
I think Ferris Bueller's a tit. A tit? That's the wrong word to use, but I think he's just, I don't know,
he's pretty good at playing a pathetic person.
No, that's why I loved him in this. I thought
Inspector
he
Gadget.
really was great in this.
Inspector Gadget, I forgot about that.
I think so.
No, I think he's perfect for this because I think Matthew Broderick is more like Tracy Flick than Reese Witherspoon is. I get the feeling, I don't know either of them, but I get the feeling that in real life Matthew Broderick would annoy me with his presence, and he would be perfectly nice and everything. But that's just like, and I do not know him. Like I've never met him. I don't know if this is true at all. But that's like just the impression I get of him off the screen, and it was actually something that made me laugh going into this film because for me, Reese Witherspoon is massively underrated as an actor. And I think she's made a load of super underrated movies. I think she's played some
direct line
incredibly
from this
multifaceted
to, Legally Blonde.
characters.
It's absolutely straight through, and she nails Legally Blonde so fantastically.
Yeah, and she's got a bunch of stuff where it is like it's just super multifaceted, and I can totally tell. Obviously, it's like early in her career, so she doesn't have as much choice. But like, you can totally tell what
she's doing.
You know, this is totally consistent. This type of character. Yeah. Whereas like, and that's why going into this movie, I thought it was kind of funny. It's like, well, I'm probably just going to be on Reese Witherspoon's side.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
Just because of that, like, and you try and be objective, but I think that definitely played into like my viewing of the whole thing.
I always find it hard to sympathise with Matthew Broderick though, and because he was responsible for killing 2 people in Ireland.
In Ireland,
and all he got was like $175 fine, and it's just insane. And like he claims not to remember any of it or something like that.
It was a car crash, wasn't it? Like the details are not very.
I think he was driving on the wrong side of the road.
I think something like that.
And I couldn't help the scene in this film where it's got the rear screen projection. It just kind of that flashed in my head as soon as I saw that scene. Scene in the film. But I did like that though, where he's driving that car and then he steps out of his shitty Fiat or whatever it is.
The way he sees himself and actually the actual life he's leading.
He manages to get a lot done during that class as well when he like gives them the test and then he like runs to the shop and then to the hotel and then sets that up and then gets back to them. Oh, does he have a shower as well? He has a shower.
Oh, I'll never forget the image of Matthew Broderick cleaning his dick.
Yes.
That will always be burnt into my brain. I find him difficult to like as a lead character in a film, as a protagonist. Like I find him much easier in this kind of role when he's thinking he's the protagonist, but he's actually a dick. I think that really suits him much better.
In Cable Guy, he's meant to be the nice guy, and you're like...
And you don't think he's even his presence make you think, well, maybe he's not being that nice. Maybe he's a bit of a dick. But I don't know. I don't know him.
I mean, maybe that's what he likes to do. Maybe he just likes to do stuff where, he's a bit of a dick as well. And it's nice to see such multifaceted characters. I think, and I think a lot of it, like you were saying about the almost slow build and slow kind of setup for then everything to be released. It's probably partly that, because it was a novel, wasn't it? It was
it was a book,
quite quickly adapted. I think, and I think that's being an adaptation. I think it carries a lot of that, just the fact that there's no protagonist really.
No, not really.
Yeah, I guess there's everyone has their kind of 2 cents to put into it, and then we're left to make up our own mind as the audience.
But I mean, I think
I think if this movie was made now, I think that Tracy I keep saying Tracy. I'm not. Yeah, Tracy Flick. I feel like they would either have to make Tracy Flick way more annoying. They'd have to make her like awful, or they'd have to like really rein it in on like.
Well, I think
a lot of the kind
it's
of
basically Parks and
element.
Rec, isn't it? It's her character. You could easily be Leslie Knope in the same role, so you could easily do something like that with her. But it depends. I think knowing the character Tracy Flick from just the internet before like seeing the film, definitely the way this film's played out in the last 20 years, that she is the villain. Like, she is the person you don't like. She is the obnoxious like person.
I 100% went to school with a girl just like her, like 100%.
Like, and that's the stuff that was thrown at Hillary in the last election, was her kind of that you're this kind of scheming, undermining politician who's really annoying and you don't want to be on the side with, and that's definitely exists, I think. But watching it, I struggle to know where the narrative came that she's the villain in the film, but clearly it was seen.
I love the scene when she's found out she's won, or like, you know,
and she's dancing. Yeah.
I love that scene, like the pure joy in her face, and she's like so happy.
Yeah, she's good.
And I was like, why can't she dance? You just think she's won. Like, what? Like, that's fine.
But I mean, you know, speaking of misogyny, I think it's interesting. Like, I think it's interesting bringing up Parks and Rec, because I think you're absolutely right that the character's name is Leslie Knope.
Yeah.
Yes, Leslie Knope in Parks and Rec. She's a politician. She wants to do things. Like, she wants to make parks.
Wants to do things, yeah.
But she doesn't want power, and she's incredibly selfless to a point, even though she's like can be a little bit sociopathic with it. So it's like everything that she's doing is for other people, even to the point where one of the later seasons, and what made me think of this, because it really annoyed me, is they make a decision where, you know, spoilers if you haven't seen it, but like they make a decision where basically Leslie Knope on her own decides that her boyfriend should run for Congress instead of her.
Yeah.
And just totally gives up her lifelong dream, because it's almost like, to be likable, she can't want anything for herself.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's something I've thought about before. And I think in this context of thinking like, why is Tracy Flick different to Leslie Knope? Why is Leslie Knope a beloved hero, and why do some people see Tracy Flick as a villain? Is Tracy Flick wants to win for herself to improve her own life, and that's
Did you know this is
for herself? Yeah.
Do you know this had a different ending? Apparently, there was a yard sale in like 2011, and someone found a VHS with like an actual alternative ending, and in
the Snyder cut.
In that, and in that ending, apparently it's more like the book. So Jim becomes a used car salesman and stays in Omaha.
Okay.
And Tracy comes to buy a car from him, and they settle their differences, and he signs her yearbook, and that's the original ending.
Oh no, I don't like that. This is much better.
Yeah.
The fact at the end of this film when he finally says the quiet part loud, and he's it's so good, and he finally just kind of you see that he hasn't learned anything. Nothing.
Yeah.
He's never learnt a thing from this whole thing. He's still the victim. She's still the reason why everything went wrong.
Well, she pretty much says that at the beginning. I can't remember. I'm paraphrasing, but she says if it plays out again, it will happen all again the same way. So it's like like you said, he hasn't learned anything, and it would just happen again. And when he's working at the museum, he sees another girl who's just like her, and it's and
it'll keep going the cycle. Yeah, and he'll keep. Yeah. I liked the way as well that he has an affair with the other guy's wife, using the same kind of undermining tricks that he did to sleep with Reese Witherspoon. But he doesn't see that in himself at all. Like, he doesn't think he's doing this at all.
So when he's driving the car and they go past the motel, do you want to get a room?
God, that was that was horrible. Like, I couldn't believe that. Like, I thought it was gonna cut, and he would have just imagined saying I didn't, I couldn't believe it. It was just horrible. And I think that it's subtle, and maybe it's something that would be less subtle now, but the way that Mr. M frames what happened between his best friend, who he describes as his best friend.
They play shit rock music
like,
together. I can't remember what they're playing there.
Exactly, yeah. Between his best friend and between Tracy Flick, it is like the way he describes it, the way he views that situation, I think is subtle, but I think it's one of the creepiest and worst things about the character, and the fact that we know about his psychosexual fixation, but then the thing that he pursues is with his neighbor, but it's like that lack of control, that lack of like impulse control in the car in that moment makes you think that like, what would that lack of impulse control mean in a private moment potentially with Tracy Flick, like, especially because he is.
There's that scene when she gets all the signatures so she can like run for class president, whatever, and he's watching her hand as she's like almost stroking the edge of the window frame on his car, and it's like,
and the creepy like when he's like going to sleep, and it's like that weird like ASMR bit, like even more so like I think at that stage, like even more so like later on than like when he's having sex with his wife and he sees like Linda's face and then he sees Tracy's face, like that's almost like at that point it's almost less shocking to see that. And there's so many things, there's so many like subtle things that we haven't even talked about. The fact that like he's a teacher, and when he goes to watch porn, he decides to watch to watch porn that's set in a school. And it reminds him of a student. It reminds him of a student. But it's always like, so, I mean, even like that is just like, it's constantly like building this case of he does such awful things constantly, and he's such a terrible person.
I don't like the fact he's got a ritual to pleasure himself. He's got this chest full of porn, and he's sitting there and he's got his comfy like little throw over. Ugh.
Yeah, I guess times were simpler in the 90s.
Now you just get Pornhub on your phone and there you go. Jobs are good.
Get to business.
On your phone. Oh god.
What, have you got it on 3 screens?
That sounds awful. I've only got 2 screens, but you know, the VR headsets in the post. It's for work. But,
what were you going to say, Liam?
What about election? Though?
I was going to say the only other thing is the lesbian storyline. Which
I was going to. We haven't talked about the system much.
I think there's a reason that it doesn't get like kind of focused on as much. You know what I mean? As the kind of, even though it is so important. It's like it is important to the story, but I think it's something that it's like Bruce Willis's part in Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? It's like the bit that if it wasn't there, it's kind of like eh.
I just felt what it was doing a little too much was saying that she's angry because she's a lesbian, instead of saying, you know, you can be legitimately mad at society and want anti-establishment kind of policies, not just because you're, you know, non-heteronormative. And I think the film a little too much went, you know, brushed her aside with well, she's angry because she's a lesbian.
What are they trying to say that it will happen again to her? Like, 'cause she's now got this new best friend.
They mirror so much of her, like because it's heavily implied that like her coming on too strong was like the reason she kind of pushed her girlfriend away. That was definitely like an element of it. Maybe it's not the whole thing, but it's definitely an element of that. And
that
then
love
it's
note's
like
amazing.
It's so mirrored.
Oh yeah,
it's so mirrored at the end where she says like we're gonna be in love forever. They're on the swing. They do the same shot with like the close up of her, and it's like you're happy now, but like you know, are you just gonna do the same?
Is that the
thing
unreliable narrator though? She's like telling it how she thinks it
well,
is.
We're just seeing her version.
Exactly.
She's now found a new girl, and they're really happy. Look, it's all the same thing happening again.
But she's going to make the same mistakes. But Paul's happy. I'm trying to remember all the stuff he was saying. Like he's like, oh, maybe my life would be totally different. Yeah.
Paul just has a party outside the cement factory.
Yeah, party at the cement factory. But that's great because you know he's happy. He hasn't done anything wrong. He doesn't feel like he's lost anything. You know, he's a bit sad about his girlfriend leaving him, but he'll get over it.
Because then another girl will appear. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, and he's played as like really kind of non-academic as well, but then apparently he gets into the place that he wants to go after school, which is great.
Well, I assume that's because his leg had healed and he can play football again.
Yeah. Paul Metzer,
that makes sense. Yeah. And yeah, that's great. So he gets to go off and do what he wants. Like he's got like the family business to fall back on, so it doesn't really matter to him, you know. And that's a lovely happy ending, you know. And it's weird that like, okay, well, there's a question: does Tracy Flick get a happy ending?
Yeah,
well,
like does she actually get what she wants? Because I think I'm racking my brains trying to remember, because I think she actually says at the end. Does she say at the end that like she thought she'd be happier or something, or she thought that after she'd done
who's she
everything?
with in the
up?
limousine? I'm trying to think who she is. Who's she with in that black car?
It says like representative something or other. So I guess it's a politician.
Governor.
Okay.
I was trying to work out if the fact that they made the governor Republican was a statement about her, like Tracy herself, rather than it being
about apples and oranges.
Yeah. But
I mean, it totally tracks that she'd be a Republican.
I think she's happy at the end of the film, kind of. I think. I don't know. No one's particularly happy in this film, frankly.
I guess that's part of the point, isn't it? And it's always like, you know, it's totally multifaceted.
I like how angry that one.
I mean, you could argue that
how angry the one kid is who's counting the ballots, and he's so angry. No, I counted them.
He's just a civil servant who's just trying to do his job, and the fucking system is going, no, you counted wrong. And he's like, I didn't fucking count wrong. Like, just let me do stuff.
Yeah, that was funny. I mean, I guess that's why I think about it, because you could argue, like, outside of one encounter in Washington, D.C., you could probably argue that, like, Mr. M is just as happy as,
I think he tells himself he's happy.
Anyone else, which I don't know. I don't know if that's like a point of the film or whatever, but yeah, it was funny.
Well, I liked him saying, "I even get to walk to work sometimes." Like it was a massive positive for him, and you just think, I don't think it's all worth it.
I've been to that museum though where he works. It's very impressive.
Sick.
Well, we didn't really go through the film in order, but I think we covered everything. Is there anything else someone would like to kind of tag with?
There's a Seb Odo track in the film.
I feel like we are. I feel like there's so many things to touch on, because there's so many subtle moments. Like even the fact that like the stump speeches, like Tracy and Paul's speeches, are essentially the same. Like there's like the apples and oranges aspect of it, which I guess like I'd like to. Do you not think that? I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's this apples and oranges things. Then the fact that like it makes a point of saying that she's with a Republican at the end is like, is that meant to be making a point? Like, I guess, like at the end of the Clinton years, like, the parallels to Hillary Clinton are like super obvious. Yeah. Like, is it meant to be surprising? I mean, if part of the message of the film is that like it's all the same and nothing matters,
I
like,
was that just surprising? I thought it was the way the film telling you, kind of placing it as the villain, to be honest. Saying it in a Hollywood film, putting her with the Republicans.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's funny as well, because that's probably the only like real like partisan statement in the whole thing. I mean, I guess from an American perspective, there's more, because there's like, homosexuality, and someone says they don't believe in God and all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure is terribly shocking to a certain type of person. But yeah, because it's a choice, isn't it? It's always a choice. Like they could have just said representative so and so without saying a party, or there's a million ways that you can show that she works in politics without.
Yeah, but they explicitly say she
like
got
they're in
Republican politics. So
yeah, and I mean for me it tracks, like just the fact that
it tracks for me for where she's from.
She has
the background, that place in America, her kind of her more authoritarian stuff, even though she could be very liberal in that side of the Democratic Party. She could easily be like an Elizabeth Warren, who was more Republican in college and then ended up working for the Democrats. So she could easily be that kind of swing kind of politician.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I guess that's why it's the choice, isn't it? Because if you said nothing, then you're just sort of not committing, and it's kind of nothing. But then if you say she's a Democrat, it's like, you know, people just kind of shrug and go whatever. But then if you say she's a Republican, it's like we end up sitting here 20 years later having a conversation about it.
I think
guess.
if she would have been labelled as a Democrat at the end of the film, it would have been almost looked like they were softening her in a weird way. Whereas it isn't in practicality, but maybe you would have read it that way a little more. Whereas Republican makes it kind of show that she kept her kind of hard stance going through everything. I don't know. I thought it was interesting, and I had trouble knowing how to read it, I guess.
I mean, she's definitely like, you know, we hear her say like she's of the opinion that if people have mediocre lives, then that's their fault and they should be jealous of people who do better. She thinks it's her destiny to succeed and do better, which means she must think it's other people's destiny to not succeed. You know, she has that kind of like superiority, but also an element of like being put upon by everyone. I was going to say like victimhood complex, because that's usually where the kind of right-wing mentality comes from. It's like you have to believe that you are superior but also being held down.
That's definitely the modern kind of view of it. In this film, it's the other way around. That she doesn't think she's a victim, and Matthew Broderick absolutely is the victim of this. And his core belief is he's a victim, and he's not doing as well because he's kept down by other stuff. Ability.
The way they film him, he's always squirming. Like, so one of the very first shots is like him going through that metal kind of like gate system where you kind of have to worm in and out, but you have to kind of scrunch your body up in an uncomfortable way to kind of get through it. His car is tiny, and he's kind of like like an elephant in like a mini, and then he's got the tiny apartment at the end. It's almost like he's always
kind of worming himself through.
So is that inconsistent with the fact that he seems like how are we meant to take the fact that, you know, he wins these like teaching awards at the school?
This is what we were saying.
So is it like, I mean, is that about like being small? Is that about being contained? It's like almost like he has more to give, like he's hit a ceiling and that's his ceiling, and he convinces himself he doesn't want any more.
No, I think it's just him kind of almost lying to himself again, like we said earlier. I don't know.
Yeah.
So Liam, you're on Letterboxd. What are you giving it out of 5?
4.5, probably.
Yeah, I'd give it a 4.5. Paul, what would you give it out of 5?
It was better than I thought it was gonna be. I'd give it a 4.
I'm glad we watched it. I like Alexander Payne. I say I like his films, but there's actually quite a few I don't like. But I think he's a good filmmaker.
You know, he co-wrote Jurassic Park 3.
Did he? Oh, he's a wonderful filmmaker then. I would say, did you see that it was an MTV film? Which there aren't that many MTV films.
Yeah, I saw that. That threw me.
Yeah.
There's Joe's Apartment, and there's the Beavis and Butthead movie, and I think that's about it.
Yeah. Do you know what the highest grossing MTV film ever was?
Beavis and Butthead?
No. Hansel and Gretel, the Witch Hunters.
That's an MTV film.
Amazing.
Yeah.
With
I thought that was
Hawkeye.
Yes, with Hawkeye himself.
Old Mr. I.
But like, the other films they've done is like Jackass, Save the Last Dance, Footloose.
Oh, I thought the Jackasses must have made quite a bit of money. They're doing another one of those. God knows how they're doing that now.
Well, they're not at the moment. Nothing's happening at the moment.
They're also old. They're just getting up off the settee quickly. That's like that's the first thing we do.
Eating solid food.
Honestly, if you haven't seen Bam Margera for 20 years, like don't Google him. It's so sad.
On a podcast. He looks like his dad.
He
looks like
death,
Phil.
Yeah, exactly. Like death comes to us all, you know. But like fucking hell, don't. You don't have to be.
He's
a
lived a life. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, totally.
And
so we like to end on a little kind of box office game. We do biggest weekends of the year, which we won't be doing for our next miniseries because the data doesn't exist. So this will be the last one we'll do for a while, and I think of something else to do for the 70s. Oh, spoilers.
Yeah, no one will listen now.
So we got the top 10 biggest weekends of 1999. We'll start from the smallest one up to the top. There's one that's the same film in two, so I'll just skip it and we'll do it together. But the first one is July 23rd, 1999. It opens to 33 million, so the smallest is 33 million. This is a big box office year. It's a DreamWorks film, it's a horror film, and it's a remake.
Mate, are we meant to guess what this is? Because I'm going to be so bad at this game.
This is what makes me laugh.
I don't my brain does not hold detail in this way.
Directed by a European guy. He was a cinematographer. It stars someone who, at this point, wasn't known for action films, but then becomes a guy who's known for action films.
I know it.
Very much so.
Did Jan de Bont direct it?
It is.
Is it The Haunting?
It is The Haunting. I don't know how you get it. Yeah, if this is the competition between Ollie and Paul, it's going to be not on.
Do you know Inspector Gadget?
Oh no, this is not a competition. Like if you're here for a public beating, then we can call it that. But
do you know Election Inspector
honestly,
Gadget?
I'll talk about
Election Inspector Gadget came out in the same year. How nuts is that?
Oh my god!
I didn't know Inspector Gadget came out this year. But have you seen that Haunting? It's a trash film.
I saw it.
Haunting and House on Haunted Hill come out the same year, and it's 13 Ghosts this year. It's 13 Ghosts next year. So you got these really weird remakes of 50s horror films that are all happening in 1999. And I can't believe this film was so big. I can't believe this film was the biggest opening weekend compared to what it was sandwiched with in release schedule.
And it's not even a Halloween release either.
No, a July film for that. It's absolutely ridiculous release to not release in October. But House on the Haunted Hill gets the October release. So, whatever. But I can't believe that was one of the biggest films. The next one is June 18th. It opens to 34. It's a Walt Disney film. Do I need to say anything more, Farley?
Animated, so it's Tarzan, isn't it, that year?
Yeah, it's Tarzan that year. Yeah. God. I don't know what to say about Tarzan. It's okay. Is it? Oh, I don't
Phil
like
Collins.
I don't like that one. It's boring.
Oh yeah, it was all Phil Collins, wasn't it?
I think he did a few Disney films. I think he may have done Brother Bear. Might be wrong with that one.
I couldn't tell you anything about Brother Bear apart from the fact it exists. That's the only thing I know about Brother Bear.
I don't know how is Tarzan a thing? Like, how do you make that an interesting story? Is it basically just like gender swap Pocahontas? Like, is that the
he
deal?
surfs down vines?
Like,
that's all you need to know. I think they thought first thing was free jumping in the jungle, or
No, because it's a little bit before free jumping, I think.
Well, okay, it's like extreme sports then, so like skating and surfing and stuff.
Yeah, I mean the animation's cool, but it's just this horrible like colonialist undertones, isn't it? That
well, that's the story from the turn of the century about white man over kind of natives.
Exactly, it's like the inherent like nobility and bullshit.
It's crap. I think it's crap. The next one, July 30th, 35 million, Paramount romantic comedy, starring the biggest female actress of the 90s, probably.
The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
Actually, the better clue, this reunites two people in a film, like a huge screen couple.
It's not male, is
it? No.
Is it them?
No.
When did it come out? Sorry,
I wasn't anywhere.
When did it come out? June
30th. Huge actress, biggest 90s actress, probably her biggest film, and reunites her with the male co-star that kind of made her. The film kind of made them in the 80s.
Made them in the 80s.
The biggest 90s actress. Who was the biggest 90s actress?
She's not very big anymore. So that's why.
I don't know anything about movies. I don't know why.
Sandra Bullock? No.
Romantic comedy.
Julia Roberts.
Yes. Go on.
Oh, is it the Running one with Richard Gere? No.
Yes. Her and Richard Gere back together running. Can you do her name?
Runaway Bride.
Yes.
All right, I got one. I feel like a winner. I feel like Jones gave me that one.
I'll let you have it.
He was there just like, I'll give him a second. He knows it.
Okay, next one, November 19th. 35 million opening, MGM film, action film. It is the newest film in a huge franchise.
Is it?
Which one it is?
Oh, fuck. The World Is Not Enough? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't have to say anything for you to get this. Next one. June 25th. 41 million. It's massive for this film. 41 million. Sony Pictures comedy. The follow-up for me, it's, I don't know, big comedic actor. He made the shift from TV to film. His biggest film was last year, so this is follow-on. It's more of a grounded film for him. It's kind of shit. But
is it?
The director of it
shit.
Directs basically all his films.
Oh, it's not the same. Ah, shit.
But you'll know you know the lead over the director, I think.
Is it Sandler? No.
Yes.
I'm trying to think what would have come out. Would it be
Big
Daddy?
Paul's got two. He's sniping.
Hey,
come on!
He's a shark. He's a shark.
I'm like the person who kind of loosens the bottle cap, and then I hand it to Paul and he opens it, and I'm like, yeah, but I loosen it for you.
That's it. We're a team.
Yeah, boy.
We share the points. We're like a tag team.
Yeah, what's to say about Big Daddy? It's kind of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say about Big Daddy? I don't know.
It exists.
Adam Sandler's got some good movies.
And none of them were directed by Dennis Dugan. I think that's the problem.
What's he directs?
He's all the Sandler films that you don't like are Dennis Dugan. It's all grown-ups and like all that.
He did Happy Gilmore. I like Happy Gilmore.
Okay.
He did Jack and Jill.
I don't hate Sandler, but I don't know. We move on. May 7th, 1999. Opens to 43. Universal Picture adventure film. It's worth pointing out that 43 million opening weekend, it's still the fifth biggest opening weekend of the year. So that's how incredible this year was. It's a remake of a very old franchise. It led to kind of multiple sequels, spin-offs, prequels.
The Mummy.
The Mummy, yes. Don't need to go into any more detail.
There he is. Go team! Go team!
And I think it's still kind of
Team Paul and Jones working together, figuring it out.
What are your thoughts on Mr. Brendan Fraser?
I like Brendan
Fraser. You know what? Fuck Brendan Fraser. There's a movie, The Mummy, with Tom Cruise. That's a movie that exists. It's real.
I've never seen it. I don't believe it. Apparently, it's part of this franchise.
They wanted to create some kind of franchise.
Paul, I think there's
a real movie.
And I was going to not do it this week.
Liam,
I can't. I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. Just like that's a real thing.
I want to create a Dark Franchise Universe T-shirt. I bet there's probably some that exist already.
Oh, I want a crew jacket. You know, there's crew jackets with Dark Universe on them.
I worked on this film that never came out. What's that?
Do you know what? I'm not like a conspiracy theory guy, but there's definitely like a shadowy cabal that are trying to like scrub everyone's memories of this movie. It's like it's just been stricken from everything. It's like how in ancient Egypt, like if they didn't like a pharaoh, like after he died, they'd chuck him in the Nile and like just destroy every like reference
Tom Cruise
to
has done it
that ever existed.
The Scientologists have paid everyone off.
Russell Crowe plays...
Yeah, the Scientologist.
Russell Crowe
It's the real
plays
conspiracy theory.
Hyde. Like Jekyll and Hyde.
Amazing.
In the Mummy, not just in. He's actually in the Mummy film as that character.
Yeah, like
he plays Samuel L. Jackson in the Mummy. That's his role.
Why did that ever happen? Like, I make fun of the DC universe, but honestly, like, this is one.
They've
step
tried
beyond,
several times.
honestly.
They tried with Van Helsing. That was meant to be the start of the new horror franchise. Then they tried it with Dracula.
Was it
Dracula something or other? Legends or something
Dracula
like
Untold?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got a really similar kind of look.
But like, I think it's the Wolfman. That was the first one, wasn't it? With
Oh, that was another one by shit.
Joe
Benicio
Johnson.
del Toro.
Yeah, Del Toro, yeah. And they did the the Sexy Frankenstein as well. What was that called? What was the Sexy Frankenstein?
Sexy Frankenstein.
It was called Sexy Frankenstein.
Frankenhooker.
Subtitle. The Doctor will see you now.
Frankenhooker. That's a real film. That's a real film. I haven't made that
up. I bet it is.
We had a copy in Video Action. It was on VHS.
Anyway,
it was the only VHS we had, and we couldn't sell it.
But yeah, that Brendan Fraser Mummy.
I like him.
It's fine, isn't it? Like, it's, you know.
Do you know who got cast as Frankenstein's monster for the Dark Universe? Do you know this dude?
No, who?
Who'd be
Javier Bardem.
I don't know.
Really?
Frankenstein's monster.
What?
Johnny Depp was the Invisible Man.
Does that mean so he didn't have to be on set
signed.
half the time? He could just kind of just chill out.
Anyway,
I always
we
wonder if
missed
Hollow
that.
Man was meant to
We
be
missed
like a restart as well.
I don't know. Who knows? No, it's like fucking Hollow Man's insane.
Okay.
Honestly, who knows how movie executives make decisions?
Imagine trying to
at this
build
point,
upon Hollow
honestly.
Man, make something more from like we have to raise the stakes. Like,
What's next?
Black Hole Man.
What's next? Liam?
right, next we're going to skip number 4 because it comes back. So number 3 is
Antimatter
June
Man.
11th, 1999. It 54 million opening weekend. This film was huge. Like, New Line comedy.
Oh, Austin Powers,
Do I
the
need
spy who
to-
shagged me.
Yes. I didn't have to say anything else.
Go team.
I
We did it. We did
We
it,
haven't
Jones.
finished yet,
We
man.
did it
haven't-
together.
We could go down in a. Could become a.
no
shitstorm.
matter what I think about Austin Powers and whatever became of Austin Powers, the scene where he does the U-turn in the corridor and then gets stuck.
Oh, it's still every day. When I have to reverse a car. Or
I
whatever
think
in a
about
short
it
space.
every time I
Yeah.
park. Yeah. Like, I've been in cars and almost got into that situation, and we've said to each other, "We're doing an Austin Powers." Like, it's like shorthand for everyone knows what that means. It's beautiful.
It is when you were talking then, when you were saying like whatever about Austin Powers. Like, I don't care. I legitimately thought you were going to say like it did amazing things for British culture.
It put Britain on a map.
British
that we
culture around the
needed
world
in those early years.
Yeah. When we were a young up and coming.
But it's crazy because the first one did okay, but
embarrassment.
the second one just did gangbusters, like massive.
I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's I guess it's not like a totally crazy concept. Like, similar things have been done before, but it was pretty out there. Like, I don't really remember like 1960s things being much of a thing. Like in the late 90s, like. I don't know.
That's fair.
It was all very like
Spice World. That
it
Spice
was all
World
very
felt
kind
like
of
a
like
60s film.
futury and.
Do you remember Desktop Buddies that used to be able to install, and they're like an animated desktop buddy?
Yeah.
I had an
Like
Austin
cats
Powers
and
desktop
dogs.
buddy. Yeah.
Amazing.
You could get
That's
strippers
my
as
memory
well
of
that
it.
strip on your
I never
screen.
got that. I never got that. It's like Clippy, but you can't
Yeah.
turn it off. Like,
It's always there, no matter what you're doing. You're playing Doom, and
Yeah.
Austin
I mean,
Powers
I guess-
pops up to say hello.
I guess now we just have Google, don't we? I've probably got like 10 devices within 5 feet of me, like transmitting all my data to like several world governments.
Cortana's absolutely listening in on on what we're doing. You know, Cortana, everyone knows
of course.
Cortana. They use it daily.
And the most dangerous, if you have a Samsung, you've got Bixby.
Bixby.
Do you know what Bixby on my phone? There's a button, like not like an on-screen button, like a hardware button that the only thing it does is open a program called Bixby. I know it's kind of like Cortana, but the only thing I know about it is sometimes when I try and turn my volume down, I accidentally hit the Bixby button, and I'm like, fuck! No!
Standing for
Abort!
Bixby. You know, like some people are obsessed with Bing, and I'm like, nah, fuck everything.
Yeah.
You need to use Bixby. That's the assistant you need in your life.
Do you know what? My wife's a programmer, and I'm gonna get her to like hack my phone. So when I accidentally press the Bixby button, instead of bringing up Bixby, it plays the Tom Cruise Mummy movie.
And it won't stop.
The trailer.
It can't stop.
Let's play the trailer they released that didn't have the full sound.
Oh yeah, forgot about that.
Oh god, yeah, I forgot about that. That's amazing.
It's one of the best things to ever happen from Hollywood.
Amazing.
All right, what's next, Liam?
Do you know what? Like, as someone who works in marketing, that's like horrifying. Like this week, the Epic Game Store accidentally tweeted out that they were going to be releasing GTA 5 on it for free, like several days before doing it. But then they still went through with this like secret thing, like with the countdown and everything. What's it going to be? And people were just like linking the screenshot of the tweet, going, "It's GTA."
And it crashed
5.
Epic yesterday as well. I noticed because I tried to get it.
Yeah.
Right,
What's next, Liam?
Of course.
Yeah.
Number 2, November 26th, 57 million. Walt Disney film. It is a sequel to one of the best ones ever made.
You got a friend of me.
Yeah.
You got a friend of me. I got troubles. I got a
We don't talk about before that before Toy Story, Randy Newman was like a kind of like adult singer. That,
I know.
Like, and then
He was
Toy
a bit of
Story
a
comes
Loudon.
out and now he's seen as like a kids' music kind
Well,
of
he
guy.
was a bit of a Loudon Wainwright, wasn't he? That kind of guy, kind of.
Well, it's all meant to be subversive, isn't he? And
Yeah.
he would, like this kind of guy playing smoky bars and moan about like politics and things, and now he's like, "You got a friend."
He did
Like,
the
Toy Story
score
2,
for
it's wonderful.
Man,
Princess and the Frog, I think.
Toy Story,
which is quite good.
What a movie!
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And known from Toy Story and Short People. That's basically it.
I think didn't he do the Ron Howard film Parenthood? I think he made on that.
Oh my god, I don't know.
Anyway,
You
next.
know much more about Randy Newman than me do. I don't even know if I have to give any details for this one. It opened on May 21st. Its opening weekend was 64 million. It was 20th Century Fox. And it was also number 4 on our list.
Star Trek.
Yeah, it was Star Trek.
Remember, we're all out there. You're the Cylon. No, you're the Cylon.
Was The Matrix
All
not
of
one of the?
99, we were at it.
Did The Matrix not get a top weekend?
No, it didn't. It didn't make the top 10.
I guess that was like
It was
under the one that just kept cruising through.
Yeah, Matrix kind of... It got...
I mean, I'll probably...
It was just a word of mouth
sorry,
movie or
Refu.
something.
Yeah, it was the same with Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense was number 1 film for like 5 weeks in a row in 1999, but it just crawled, basically, and kept on just demolishing, and it ends up being...
Right.
It ends up being like the second biggest film of the year, but it doesn't have the biggest opening weekend. Like Matrix ends up being the 5th biggest film of the year, and again, just keeps building, really. But it's weird that... I like the biggest weekends things because it's not so much what the biggest films were, but what people were really anticipating. Like the biggest weekends tell you about marketing more than anything else. And it's funny that like the biggest films coming out of that was stuff like The World Is Not Enough, that Big Daddy, and the stuff that survived in our kind of zeitgeist isn't the stuff really on biggest weekends.
You know what? Imagine that it's 1999. And there's like this trilogy called Star Wars that's like really good, and you're really into it, and you watch it when you're a kid, and you really love it.
You got the VHS.
And then there's like a new, yeah. You got
and you've been to the cinema the last couple of years to watch the re-releases because they've been all. They're fun to watch in the cinema, but they've been tinkered with a little bit. But it's fine. It's still Star Wars.
Do you know what? They're so awful.
Yeah, they are.
Have you watched they're really bad. Like there's nothing gets better with any of the new stuff in it. There's like I can't think of like a single thing that like improves any of the movies.
There's a couple of times when you kind of drags the camera out a little bit to just kind of give you more breathing space and stuff, and little things like that. And some of the perspective in the first film, like he makes like the corridors of Death Star bigger and stuff like that. Which
and like Cloud City,
they don't
open
need
that
to be
up.
there, but I can't criticize it. But
like
it's
Cloud
just
City,
when
you can actually see out of the Cloud City, so you can see that it's in the sky. And
yeah,
not just like
but when he just decides this is the scene where some CGI boogin is going to bounce along the screen and stuff like that, it's so pointless.
It's the Jabba the Hutt one that's awful.
Yeah, the Jabba's the worst one.
Yeah,
it's like no.
No, there's so much of it to me. Like even those like extra kind of panoramic shots are the kind of thing that like, you know, in an art book or like a DVD extra of like, oh, this is how we would have done it if we could have. Like that's all like really cool and interesting. But when you put it in the film, I'm just sitting there like why are we spending all this time? Like you don't need to establish this shitty little desert town. Like that's the one that comes to mind when they arrive in Tatooine. There's this huge like thing and like all this stuff, and it's Mos Eisley. There's all this stuff going on, and it's just a waste.
The things I agree with
is an absolute waste of time. It's like there's a reason why that shot wasn't longer in the original. They could have just made that shot longer, but they didn't.
The things I agree with, like cleaning it the matte lines and stuff like that. That's fine. But it's when you add a CG layer to it, and especially when CG was in its infancy, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. Do you know what I mean?
Really
it just doesn't work.
Because they don't look...
But anyway, of course, I was going to say, of course, all of this is massively overshadowed by the awful, awful Phantom Menace that some people now are trying to, like, retroactively say isn't actually as bad as people say.
I defended Phantom Menace to you the other night, but my defense of Phantom Menace isn't that it's good. My defense of Phantom Menace is it's the best of the three.
Of the bad bunch.
The problem with the other two is that, like...
Yeah, but that's not...
The problem with what I like about Phantom Menace is that it's George Lucas doing his thing. And what's the hate about the other two is it's so influenced by the fact of how negatively Phantom Menace was kind of, you know, the fallout of it. And they're boring films, the other two, where... I mean, Phantom Menace is quite boring, but at least it had something. It has.
It
something,
felt a bit
it has something
tactile
to it that the others don't.
It felt
Yeah,
tactile, and it was on.
also...
A lot of it was filmed on real sets. It's not all blue screen, green screen stuff, and
it's got a bit of hope to it as well. It's got. It's a filmmaker looking forward to making something. It's a difference between the Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit films. Like it's. I feel like the first film George Lucas wanted to make, and the other films.
Well, people turned on him straight away, so the other two were made with him going.
I know, and it feels like that. Like it really feels like that. Like it's not to say Phantom Menace is good. It's just I think it feels nicer to watch than the other two.
Yeah, I think that always drove me mad when people said that like Revenge of the Sith was actually good, and I'm like, nah, it's just got Darth Vader in it. Like you just hear that like, and you think that it's good. Apparently, it's like, hey, he did the thing. But yeah, I mean, Phantom Menace, there's so many things to say about it, but I think for me, it's like the first scene is like two dudes sitting around a table talking about like a trade discussion.
It's amazing.
And then they jump up and it's like lightsabers.
It's
like, okay,
Star
all right.
Wars is like this text that tells you about blockade of like Federation trading and stuff. And then the opening scene is two Jedis. Oh, there's more Jedis. There's not just Obi-Wan. And like that is Obi-Wan. And there's not just Luke. There's actually going to be a whole world of... And they're sitting down having tea from a robot. and then some droids attack for no reason, and they bounce off the place. You're like, this is weird. This isn't what I was expecting to happen.
It's weird. It's like the whole point of it is to like just kind of drive home the idea that the Jedi are actually shit and boring.
George hates the Jedi.
It's almost that was the point that George Lucas was trying to make with this movie. But then that's the first scene. So we can say, okay, that's a bad place to start. Maybe it goes somewhere good. But then we have the last scene, which in my mind is you've got little Anakin
with his little rat tail,
and you've got with his little rat tail, and you've got Queen Amidala. I can't even remember the fucking character's name. You've got Queen Amidala standing there looking at Anakin going, yeah. I'll have a bit of that. That's the man I'm gonna have babies with, standing right there next to me.
On that note, I think that's time to call today a wrap.
Tune in tomorrow where we'll be doing Phantom Menace rewatch.
Speaking of terrible endings,
we're going to do that.
Sorry, guys.
So, Liam, what are we talking about next time?
Oh, I didn't even think. So, we finished the end of our miniseries now.
Yay!
And we figured before running into the next one, before running into the next decade, we wanted to tie up some stuff. So what we're going to do is go back to do one of our influencer series. So like the way we did Kevin Smith, we're going to look at Bill Murray, but we're going to look at Bill Murray through his only feature he directed, which is Quick Change, which came out in 1990, I believe. So our next episode will be Quick Change, where we're going to talk a bit more about Bill Murray, what someone like Kevin Smith who was really influential to us. We're also then going to do a classics rewatch, and we're going to dive in. We kind of talked about this in the podcast, so it came out of the episode, but we're going to dive into Batman Forever, I think, and we're going to actually go back to that and see what the hell Batman Forever is, and then so those will be the next two episodes. Really, they might drop a bonus in between it where we do a bit of wrap up. So, Paul, thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I would encourage people to not find me on the interwebs. I don't put out anything relevant to anyone. I will say, if you enjoyed this free content, maybe get on Steam and buy an indie game for full price.
That sounds good.
Maybe next time there's a game on Steam that comes out, maybe just buy it instead of waiting for a sale. How about that? Maybe leave a review.
Speaking of review,
maybe if you don't have any money to spend, maybe if you have an indie game that you've played on Steam and enjoyed, maybe leave a review for it, say that it's good.
Speaking of reviews, you can give us a nice review on the Apple Podcast app. We're also on Spotify. We're on Twitter. We're at Adjust Your Track. That's a YR, not a your. Oh, we're on YouTube now.
Follow Better Feeling on Instagram as well.
Yeah, follow Better Feeling. That's mine. You can see some of my film exploits as well as stuff related to the podcast. And that's it for today. So remember, if the picture's bad, don't forget to adjust your tracking.